Good morning. The March 20th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. As the board continues to meet in this virtual hybrid setting, we ask all folks who are with us today in person to ensure that your electronic devices are turned off or at a minimum placed on silence so you do not disrupt today's proceedings. For those of us who are joining via the bridge, we ask that you, if it's your opportunity to speak and present to the board, we ask that you state your name, the organization you're calling in from, speak loudly and clearly, and then proceed with your testimony for today as the board chair recognizes you. At this time, I will ask our amazing clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. We have just one change, or correction rather, this morning. For item SB 24-10188, this is a procurement item. We are striking the action start date of 12/20/2023 and inserting 4/1/2021. We have the following protests to note this morning. For SB 24-10870, procurement award RFQ 205, management and operate food and beverage service for the Baltimore Convention Center. A statement of opposition has been received from Sodexo Live. For SB 24-10842, procurement award RFQ 265, mowing and debris removal for vacant lots and abandoned properties. A protest has been received from P2 Cleaning Services. For SB 24-10108, Department of Housing and Community Development, city-owned real property fixed pricing disposition policy, a statement of support has been received from the SOS Fund, and a statement of opposition has been received from Dr. DeWanda Farmer. We have the following deferrals and withdrawals to note this morning. Item SB 24-10101, procurement, increase contract 6,000, technical support and system administration for this consolidated collection system. This item is being withdrawn at the request of the Department of Finance. For SB 10915, procurement, renewal, B5000-5795, laboratory analysis services. This item is being deferred at the request of the President. SB 24-10330, procurement, emergency procurement request multiple. This item is being withdrawn at the request of the CAO. For SB 24-14868, procurement, award, contract 8,000, gunshot detection, location, and forensic services, and API subscription services. This item is being deferred at the request of the Comptroller. SB 24-10759, procurement, award solicitation 6,000, mowing and mulching of 145 acres of turf areas. This item is being deferred at the request of the Comptroller. SB 24-10653, procurement, OEM parts and services. This item is being deferred at the request of the Comptroller. And SB 24-10407, Department of Housing and Community Development, lien release for 1644 North Appleton Street. This item is being withdrawn at the request of the Department of Housing. We have the following items that will appear on the non-routine agenda this morning, and they are as follows. SB 24-10469, Department of Audits, biennial performance audit of the Department of Finance for the fiscal years ending June 30, 2022 and June 30, 2021. SB 24-10749, Department of Audits, Independent Audit Annual Comprehensive Financial Report of the Enoch Pratt Free Library for fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. SB 24-10642, Department of General Services, Emergency Procurement Contract GS 23801, Baltimore City Police Department Headquarters Garage Repairs. SB 24-10108, Department of Housing and Community Development, City-Owned Real Property Fixed Pricing Disposition Policy. These are on the non-routine and have a statement both of support and opposition that have been received. SB 24-10251, Mayor's Office of Government Relations, Consultant Agreement with Clark Hill PLC. SB 24-10791, Baltimore City Information Technology, Cooperative Contract with Revenue Solutions. SB 24-10842, Procurement, Award, RFQ 265, Mowing and Debris Removal for Vacant Lots and Abandoned Properties. Again, a protest has been received for this item. SB 24-10188, Procurement, Extension, Personal Property Billing System. SB 24-10765, Procurement, Increase for Sourcewell Contract 091219, Mobile Refuse Collection Vehicles with related equipment, accessories, and services. And SB 24-10870, Procurement, Award RFQ 205, Manage and Operate Food and Beverage Service for Baltimore City Convention Center. And again, a statement of opposition has been received for that item as well. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on the following items. SB 24-10049, Health Department Provider Agreement with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. SB 24-10122, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University Medicine. Bayview Medical Center, Integrated Viral Hepatitis Surveillance and Prevention Funding for Health Departments. And SB 23-14515, Health Department Provider Agreement with Johns Hopkins University Center for Adolescent Health. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and reimbursements. The Honorable City Solicitor Ebony Thompson is abstaining on 24-10485, Employment Contract. And our new Acting Director of Public Works, welcome. Director Khalil Zaid is abstaining on SB 23-10999, Employment Contract, and on SB 24-10838, Reimbursement of Monthly Housing Allowance. We also have the following no votes to read into the record this morning. The Honorable President Nick Mosby is abstaining on the following items. Is voting no on the following items. SB 24-10715, Amendment 2 for Mann's Woodward Studios, Inc., under Project 1366R, on-call architectural design services to add ARPA language. SB 24-10490, approval of interagency subgrant agreement between Mayor's Office of Recovery and the Department of Housing and Community Development. SB 24-10705, grant agreement, Baltimore City Public Schools, capital design services and renovations. SB 24-10710, grant agreement, Parks and People, Cecil Community Park, Phase 2. SB 24-1031, Amendment 1, ARPA, Broadband and Digital Equity ARPA Interagency Agreement. SB 24-10727, Amendment 1, ARPA Subgrant Agreement, Enoch Pratt Free Library, Chromebooks. SB 24-10604, MONSE, Next One Up Foundation Incorporated, ARPA. And SB 24-10740, First Amendment to the Maryland Connected Devices Grant Agreement. Again, those are no votes from the Honorable President Nick Mosby. And, Mr. President, that concludes the opening statement for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the opening statement.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement has now been adopted. I now would like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated March 18, 2024. Identify matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have been read in by our clerk. I'll entertain a motion at this time to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda items have now been adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 9, SB 24-10469, Department of Audits. This request is to note the biennial performance audit of the Department of Finance for fiscal years ending June 20th, 2022, and June 30th, 2022, and June 30th, 2023. On behalf of the Department of Audits, we have our auditor. If you could state your name and then begin your presentation, sir.
Good morning,
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members of the board, my name is Josh Pash. I'm the city auditor. I am here to present I'm here to present the biennial performance audit of the Department of Finance. I will go over the audit objective and scope, the audit methodologies, background, findings, and then take any questions. The audit methodology was to evaluate the effectiveness and accuracy of the retroactive payment process for employee earnings in Workday, including the calculation and disbursement of withholdings that are based on employee earnings. We looked at fiscal years 22 and 21, and we worked with the Department of Finance, Bureau of Accounting and Payroll Services, and Department of Human Resources. Our audit methodologies include interviewing key individuals with Department of Finance, including consultants, and then performed walkthroughs to obtain an understanding of the retro payment process. We observed the consultants processing COLAs and ad hoc retro payments, and then we identified the related risks and key controls regarding that process. We also analyzed roles of a person who has access, who moved from Human Resources and payroll. And then we judgmentally selected samples and tested validity of retro payment requests and accuracy of the payments. And then we sampled COLA retros to test the accuracy of pension deductions. So there are two types of retro payments that we looked at. There are COLA, which are based on MOUs between the city and different unions. And when those negotiations get completed, they are not always completed prior to the start and effective date, and resulting in a retro payment for those COLA increases. And then ad hoc retros are processed to adjust incorrect payments from prior periods. That would include incorrect leave posted or overtime that was not posted timely, and those requests are tracked in SolarWinds ticketing system. We noted that the retros are put in through two methods. One, they are input the relative information into Workday, and Workday goes and recalculates the adjustments and those payments. The second one is the retros are manually calculated, and then they were manually entered into Workday. Our finding one is that staffing vacancies and conversion to Workday without written guidance and proper training significantly contributed to errors in the retro payment processing. We looked at 54 samples, and when we noted that there are significant errors in retro payment calculations, and in some cases there are insignificant documentation to confirm the validity of certain retro payments. For testing the accuracy of ad hoc retros, 14 of the samples we looked at, there was approximately $4,000 in pension deductions that were not taken from salary adjustments that were applied retroactively. And then there were 27 retros totaling approximately $120,400. They were processed using method 2, which was manually entering in those numbers and having to calculate all of the deductions related to those. And we found that that method is prone to human error. And then we also found a case where there was a duplicate payment that was processed through method 1, the automatic processing through Workday, and a manual entry. When we tested the validity of ad hoc retros, we noted 16 had related SolarWinds tickets. However, when we traced those from Workday back to SolarWinds tickets, the 6 of them, approximately $25,000 worth, did not have correct references back and forth to make to facilitate the tracing of the retro back to the supporting documentation. We also noted one credit retro of about $5,000 was recorded with no indication of the source and how it was calculated, and a credit retro is a transaction to correct an overpayment. We looked at the causes. The city is heavily relying on consultants. And we also noted the city does not have written policies and procedures outlining the retro process, that it is done based on word of mouth and informal processes. And then we also noted that the city does not provide training to employees on how to use Workday for those retro payments. The effect is employee earnings are misstated, and then there's inaccurate disbursements. Our recommendation is to establish formal policies and procedures that would include step-by-step processing to guide how to process retro payments in Workday, and then also to make sure that's consistent, and then to clearly and consistent reference the SolarWinds tickets in Workday. That would include consistently including employee identification number and name into SolarWinds tickets. Basically, that would allow you go to Workday, look up a retro, and then trace it into SolarWinds to identify the supporting documentation, the calculation, and why it was made. And then the EIN in SolarWinds ticket is to facilitate finding a retro in SolarWinds and then tracing it back to where it was posted in Workday. Also recommend avoid hard coding of retros in Workday, which is manually entered, and to have Workday automatically calculate those retros when the system can do it. And then the next one is ensure that documentation supporting the calculation of retro payments are attached to the payment, whether it is attached in Workday or SolarWinds, especially when hard coding is necessary so that people can trace back to those calculations, and then to train the employees on how to complete the retro process for consistency. Finding 2, the city had to pay employee portion of pension contributions. What we found was the retro payments for COLA did not consistently deduct pension contributions from employee paychecks. We looked at 28 bulk COLA increases from July 21 to September of 23. 10 of those COLA increases were effective as of the effective date, typically July 1st, and therefore there was no retro that was necessary for those. 18 were applied subsequent to the fiscal year and the effective date, and for those, the city did not take pension contributions out of those employee salary changes for 10 of them, and those were related to fiscal years 22, 23, and 24. Here is a list of those. When we looked at the causes, we noted that until August of 23, the retro time process was not set up in Workday to calculate and deduct employee pension contributions in the Workday system. Therefore, when the retros were run, that pension was not actually calculated. In Workday, the retro salary changes that were set up in those processes were actually not noted in the system as subject to pension deductions, and then when they were processed, the people reviewing those did not catch those so that they could be corrected. So what is the effect of this? Basically, the city had to pay for missed pension contributions. What I mean there is when annually an actuary calculates the annual pension cost for the current year of service, and they determine how much needs to be put into the pension plan to support the current employees and retirees. And part of this is paid through employee contributions, and then the rest, which is calculated by the actuary, is paid by the city. So therefore, when the employees don't contribute, the city has to make up those when they are putting in the difference calculated by the actuary. Additionally, the city made a separate payment of approximately $500,000 for those missed contributions for 4 of those COLA bulk increases during fiscal year 22. Those 4 included AFS, CME, Local 2202, Local 44, Council 67, and 558, and CUBS. A recommendation there is to establish and implement policies and procedures to perform an analysis in a test environment prior to processing mass retro payments. In other words, to calculate those mass retro payments in a test system, go do analyticals to make sure they're correct before actually putting them into the live system, and then to outline those analytics that are needed to complete the test environment and train responsible personnel on how to do analytics. When we did our testing, there was a very limited number of personnel who knew how to do this. I will take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. At this time, are there any questions for the auditor from the board?
Just one.
Ms. Comptroller?
Thank you. I'm sorry, this may have been on the chart there. How many employees were affected by the retro?
So an estimate is about 12,775.
Okay, thank you. And you laid out the union, so do you have the breakdown of how many by union?
That is, so 3,322 by CUB, and then basically they're listed in the 4th column.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this time, Mr. CFO, would you like to come and update the board?
Good morning. My name is Michael Moxton. I am Chief Financial Officer for the City of Baltimore. It's a pleasure to come before you on this quite difficult topic, because this audit covers some of the most complex time period in the Department of Finance's history. 2 years ago, the payroll department in the city was at its lowest staffing level ever. What happened was a combination of the pandemic, generational turnover, and talent loss, and all of that put us in a place where we were vulnerable. Retroactive payments are the most complicated type of activity that we process on a daily basis, and that was where ultimately our vulnerability showed up 2 years ago. We were still making payments to employees every day, as is our goal and mission. To do that, we relied on outside help, which was just a Band-Aid and a patch, and it became apparent where that was insufficient as we got into more difficult and complex adjustments that had to be made. I want to thank the audit department for working with us very collaboratively on this deep dive, because as we staffed up, as we put policies in place, and as we improved, they shared their kind of recommendations with us in real time. They tracked our successes in real time, and that allowed us to improve in real time and ultimately get well on our way to paying our employees correctly, on time, every time. I'm now going to pass it over to Deputy CFO Ioana Moisides to go into some details of the findings.
Good morning, Ioana Moisides, Deputy Director of Finance, and good morning, President Mosby, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and welcome back, Director Said. Good to see you. I want to join or be very specific on the thanks. Often people don't realize with the Department of Audits that in order for them to adequately audit, they really need to become subject matter experts. And so I would say that they were processing payroll right with us at times and asking questions and right in the mix. And so I genuinely appreciate that effort. I want to talk at a high level about some things that are really important, and one is the missed pension contributions, right? And this occurred because the employee retirement system pay codes were not configured to take out deductions during the retro process. And so when we realized that, we did a couple of interim steps. And those interim steps were payroll and DHR created manual reports, several of them to calculate the original base compensation, to identify what should have been contributed. At that point, we were working with ERS, also wonderful partners, pretty much hand in hand. We also developed a designated ERS payroll liaison. And so in August of 2023, we were able to successfully move the new configuration change into production so that now that process is automatic. And finally, and most importantly, as relates to the missed contributions, under the leadership of this administration, in partnership with our stakeholders, the Office of the Labor Commissioner, DHR, and most importantly, the unions that were impacted, we were able to review the options, and we came to the decision that the city would in fact make those missing contributions. And I want to say that out of errors also come very proud moments. And I was personally proud that the city made that decision to show that commitment to the employees. And now the good news. So we saw the recommendations, and often when we come up here, our recommendations are in process. And in fact, we did in our official response give ourselves the timeline of July 2024. But in fact, I'd like to report that all of these are done. Now, some of them are continual. So training is not a one and done. Training is you train existing staff, you have a plan for staff as they're onboarding, and then you evolve training as there are either updates to the system or new configurations. So that process, the step-by-step process on how to process retro payments in Workday is complete. Clearly and consistently referencing SolarWinds tickets in Workday is complete. Now, that's an expectation of staff, obviously on an ongoing basis. I'm jumping into tickets. The payroll manager is to see, are people referencing that? Consistently including employee identification number. And most importantly, avoiding those manual input processing of retros where possible. And this is where I'd like to point to one of our achievements. We've had other subsequent retros, and in fact, in January, we had a very big one, and that impacted about 5,192 employees. And in that process, with the assistance of audits in developing, we actually did a step process. So DHR put in the compensation changes, and then instead of promising employees that that very same week they would see the retros, we had a phased approach over a period of a month. And what that allowed your payroll team to do behind the scenes is when they weren't processing regular payroll, they were in the test environment, running payroll, seeing what kicked out, going back to agencies to fix errors in employees' records, et cetera. So as a result, we only had to process about 325 individuals manually. That was a big success. And finally, an important note about staffing, and I just want to say that although I'm talking a lot, Chief Floyd and the payroll team are really the heroes in this story. In the past approximately 6 months, we've hired a payroll manager, 2 accounting systems analysts, 3 fiscal techs, and we have our new deputy payroll manager starting the beginning of April. So that's about 7 staff. That is all part of our longer-term plan to look at reducing consultant support and fully bringing payroll in-house. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from the board? Mr. Mayor? Okay. Anyone else?
Yep, she answered everything I might have asked.
Well, thank you so much. This will wrap up this agenda item. The report on the audit will be noted. Thank you, Mr. Auditor. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 10, SB 2410749. Department of Audit's request is to provide the annual comprehensive financial report for the Enoch Pratt Free Library for fiscal year ending 2030. June 30th, 2022, on behalf of the Audit Department, we have.
My name is Josh Passman, the auditor. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable members of the board. I am here to present the annual comprehensive financial report for the Enoch Pratt Free Library for the fiscal year ended June 2022. I'll go through our audit objective, our audit opinion, and our findings, and then take any questions. So the objective is obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement, and we looked at fiscal year 2022. Our audit opinion is unmodified, which means that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material specs, and for the respective financial position of governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information for the library as of June 22, and the respective changes in financial position. Basically, it's a clean opinion. Regarding findings, I want to define types of internal control findings. A deficiency in internal control is when the design or operation of a control does not allow management or employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent, detect, and correct misstatements on a timely basis. A material weakness is a deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting, such that there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. That is the most serious. And then a significant deficiency falls in the middle. Basically, deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control that is less severe than a material weakness, but important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. For fiscal year 22, we did not find any internal control deficiencies. For fiscal year 21, we had one repeat one, which was a deficiency over fixed asset accounting. The library does not maintain detailed historical records, itemized records for a portion of their capital assets valued at $17 million. These assets relate to historical transactions. Basically, they are mostly buildings and improvements that were put into service prior to 2008. And we also found the library does not perform periodic physical capital inventories. And to conclude my presentation, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. Are there any questions for the Audit Department? Hearing and seeing none. Is someone here from the Enoch Pratt Library or online?
Good morning to the board. I'm Kenny Clash, COO of Enoch Pratt Free Library. Just want to thank city auditors for their collaboration, support, and guidance during the process. Any questions?
Any update on some the findings or?
Just wanted to say, I mean, as Josh said, it's related to the historical records. We don't have historical records for those assets, so we look forward to navigating those challenges.
Thank you. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, thank you, Mr. COO.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. This report will be noted. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 22 and 23, SB 2410642, Department of General Services. This request is to note the construction contract emergency with Restoration East LLC. On behalf of Department of General Services, we have
Good morning, honorable board members. My name is Marwan Karajat. I'm the Chief of Capital Projects Division. The facility experienced localized structural collapse, and we used the emergency procurement to address the issue promptly. We were able to secure the fund in a timely manner, also secure the MBE, WBE participations. The project currently is undergoing. Contractor is on site. Safety shoring has been completed, and actual repair has been started. The construction contract duration is 365 days, and we expect it to complete the project by the beginning of next year. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Director. For the general public and for us who might not quite understand what localized collapse is, could you just explain what took place for the record?
Absolutely. On the day we inspected the facility, we found a slab section of the decking surface on the third level. It's almost 1 foot by 3 foot, fell from the third floor to the second floor. Also, we realized the structure has been deteriorated for a while and needed to be addressed. But that was the immediate emergency. But also important to note, DGS was working on developing design document to do complete restoration. While we're working on the design document, preparing the document, this incident took place. At that point, we realized we have to utilize the emergency procurement and address the issue, also close down the operation to avoid any damages.
Yes, sir. And what's the facility?
It's the police headquarters garage.
Thank you.
500.
And what's the total cost of this emergency procurement?
The total cost is $6.83 to give you the exact figure.
Thank you so much. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we discussed earlier, when a big chunk of cement or concrete falls out of the roof of your garage with no warning, that is pretty much the definition of the need for an emergency procurement. I have no concerns or questions along those lines. I do just want to make a clarification, which might be more about rumor control than anything else. But the emergency procurement that you're bringing before us today to note, that is just about repairs to the garage itself. There is no other construction or renovation for any other facilities adjacent to the garage. Somebody out there is under the impression that evidence control is being fixed as part of this. And I just wanted to get a clarification on that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Controller. Part of the design document that DGS was working on is addressing waterproofing issue in the basement of the structure of the garage, where the unit is.
Evidence control is in the basement of the garage. Now that clicks. Okay.
And waterproofing is a structure, correct.
Okay.
And we're working on relocating them so to make sure we can address the foundation, the waterproofing issue while we're doing on restoring the surfaces above.
Yeah, got it.
So it's an indirect improvement,
But that's still,
Because it's part of the
you're fixing the garage, and that's an ancillary benefit of fixing the garage. I get that. Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions, comments from members of the board? At this time, we will note this.
Thank you.
It's an emergency procurement. Thank you so much. Great job, DJS. The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on pages 66 through 69, SB 2410108, Department of Housing Community Development. This request is to approve a fixed pricing schedule for certain properties owned by the mayor and city council. The terms of the form of this fixed pricing land disposition agreement and the establishment to the BOE process for approval of future sales. On behalf of DHCD, we have
Commissioner Alice Kennedy before you this morning, sir. Council President, President of the BOE. Good to see everyone this morning. Once again, we are before you this morning for the approval of the fixed pricing structure, which would outline a routine agenda item and process for bringing the properties to the Board of Estimates through that routine agenda item, and setting forth the pricing structure for the properties, which range from a price of $3,000 for a vacant building to $1,000 for nonprofits, 50 employees or less, and then down to $1 for community land trusts and homeowners, and then another pricing structure for vacant lots ranging from $1,000 to $1.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. We've had a healthy and long dialogue on this. Definitely at last BOE, that's why ultimately we decided to, the mayor asked to defer to this time. So I think we have two folks here that want to kind of provide comment on it. One is in support, one is in opposition. This time I will call them up, and then I'll bring you back, Madam Commissioner, so we can wrap it up. The first is, I have SOS Fund.
Good morning. My name is Nika Namdi. I'm the Executive Director of the SOS
I'm sorry,
Fund.
if you could speak into the microphone. Say your name.
Sure. I'm normally loud enough. Sorry.
It's all good.
Again, my name is Nika Namdi. I'm the Executive Director of the SOS Fund, and we're here in support of the fixed price model with the understanding that the underlying administrative policy that implements the pricing model does the following. One, it needs to prioritize people, current residents, and residents that have been displaced from neighborhoods where they are attempting to buy property. Second, there needs to be funding and technical assistance for residents and current residents attempting to do rehab. And if you look at the model of the Detroit Land Bank, you can kind of see where we're coming from with that. Most importantly, probably is the speculators and slumlords need to be barred from participating in this program. They're not hard to find. If people think we can't identify them, you simply need to go ride through the neighborhoods and look for places where the buildings, the structures are not in good condition and the owners do not live in community. They're your speculators and slumlords, and they shouldn't be able to participate in this program because that shows a lack of equity. The last two things is any side lots purchased should allow the 10-year current land disposition agreement has a 10-year building restriction. That should be removed in order to allow people to do rehabilitation of the or construction that allows aging in place, that allows multi-generational living, and that allows micro-enterprise development. And the last piece of administrative policy for the fixed price model that we think is really, really important is that anyone who has previously had or currently has an adopt-a-lot license should be given first right of refusal before that lot is sold to someone else, even if their license is not current, because we have many instances where people have been extorting out of their own pockets vacant lots in the city, and we don't think that before they are given an opportunity to buy, that those lots should be sold to people from wherever to do whatever. And so we support this model because it is simple, it is clear, it's transparent, but we need it to be equitable, and that's why we're asking for those administrative policies to be implemented along with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have in opposition, Dr. Dwanda Farmer. Dr. Farmer.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Comptroller, ladies and gentlemen, City of Baltimore. My name is Dr. DeWanda Farmer, and I am a community economic development professional with more than 25 years' experience working in the affordable housing sector in multiple cities across this country, Latin America, and Africa. I currently am the CEO of the CED Dr. RX because we have the prescription for what ails your community, and I am the co-founder of Smart ALEC, which is a nonprofit policy wonk agency. We are a paradoxical play on ALEC, who many of you may be familiar with the ugly policies they have passed across this country. We have instead focused on affordable housing, green energy, and democracy. I rise today because I am deeply invested in the welfare and the future of our communities in Baltimore. I'm a native of Baltimore. I'm a Sinai baby, one of the first, okay? So yeah. All right? So I'm deeply invested in Baltimore and what happens. And through my professional and lived experience, I've gained many transferable lessons. The one I wish to share with you today is affordability. Affordability is most likely to be achieved in early efforts to revitalize distressed communities. Once the initial catalytic investments have been made in lower neighborhoods, they quickly become middle neighborhood status. And from there, it is often a firestorm to gentrification, if not managed appropriately from the start. I would like to humbly ask the City of Baltimore to target its limited resources to the areas of greatest need that have the highest impact in low-income and distressed communities. And I'd like to implore to this board and to the staff at DHCD that this could very well be the last opportunity that this city has to make a mark for low, very low, and extremely low income residents of this city. And we cannot forget them. Baltimore City historically has been the beacon, the light, in leading the way in harmful policies to low-income brown communities. And we would not want to continue doing that in 2024 when we have a historical record that leaves such a black eye and a damning result for Baltimoreans. And so without belaboring the comments I've written and sent for you, I do want to bring 2 points to the fore. One is about this whole conversation of equity and data-driven results or actions. And I would say that this policy has not chosen to do that. It's not using the data that we have. It's not looking at the historical impact of these vacancies or the opportunities. If this is such a priority that we have to move forward swiftly today, then how come it was not as great a priority when we had a windfall of $641 million that we weren't expecting? Surely there could be a pot of money to do what Ms. Nika Namda just said, having a pot of money that would allow residents who had been evicted or historically removed from this community the opportunity to purchase a property, to own it. And quite frankly, the data tells us that we, Baltimore, are a city. There's some facts that we know. One, this market has one of the better return on investments in rental property in America. So any developer that tells you he can't make money, he is hustling you. Okay? Don't be hustled. They're hustlers. I've worked with them for 30 years. I know how to create a gap so that we need your financing. Okay? So we won't belabor that. But what I'm saying to you is that the data tells us that in this city, 80% of area median income has been fulfilled. There's 101 units for every 100 units you need. I would suggest it is irresponsible for a government to continue to invest where the market has met the need. Not one more dollar in public resources should be spared for any affordability over 60%. The need in this market is greatest at 30%. You need to get your partner, the housing authority, and the developers who would like to provide affordable housing in this city that like to chase incentives, to know that those incentives will be restricted to 30 and 50%. At 30%, we have 38 units for every 100 units we need. At 50%, we have 58 units for 100 units we need. This is why homelessness is exacerbated and not being eliminated. We have to have units at the level of income where the demand is not being met. And so I would implore you to put the brakes on this policy and rethink of it. If the staff at DHCD has spent 2 years developing this policy, and it has these limitations, these gaps, these missed opportunities, 6 more months won't change anything. And quite frankly, if we're talking about 200 properties, 300 properties, and I'm not sure what the truth is, because the process is a little less than transparent and the story keeps changing. First, it's we're going to take care of legacy Baltimoreans. We're going to wait 90 days, but that's a farce. 90 days to hold this open only to legacy residents when we've not done the work to inform them, to provide technical assistance or resources to aid and abet them, is just, it's a smokescreen. It's a clown show, and I don't think that it's fair to even suggest that to our residents, that we were in any way trying to help them. And then lastly, I said I was going to make 2 points, but I do have a third. We limited the $1 purchase price to Community Land Trust. And just because I have the experience of working with these entities in other cities, I can just tell you that while I have a client in Seattle that's doing tremendous work that should be held up as a model for Community Land Trust, this particular type of entity has yet to demonstrate the capacity in Baltimore City to have results, okay? And so to only let, first of all, there's probably, 3, 4 of them, and they have no results or very limited results. And so it's very limited to what they could possibly do. Whereas we have community development corporations and CHODOs who have a history of successfully bringing to market low-income housing, and I think that we should allow them the opportunity to participate in the dollar purchase as well. Those are my comments. Thank you very much for entertaining me this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farmer. At this time, we're going to call back up Madam Commish. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Nika and Dr. Farmer. I just want to reiterate some stuff that I said last week, just to make sure that it's back on the record. But I want to start to where Dr. Farmer left off. Dr. Farmer, just for a point of the record, we have invested $100 million of our ARPA money into housing projects and $75 million into dealing directly with homelessness, including addressing building units and things that we actually just had an announcement for last week. Nearly a quarter of our funds have been put towards housing. I always caution us all in thinking us as ARPA as a windfall. It was given to us for recovery, and in fact, we have to all be reminded consistently, even myself, that when it was given to us, there were things specifically that we were told that we had to spend it on, most notably COVID, the reason why we got it in the first place. And we have to make sure that we're continuing to invest in things that help the city recover, and we will continue to uplift and make sure that we're making those investments in housing and places and spaces that have been historically disinvested in and ignored. But as I shared last week, and Nika, I want you to hear me say to Director Kennedy that I want her to directly talk with you about this as well, but I already instructed DHCD to develop an anti-displacement and equity-based framework based on community input that will guide their work about the policy decisions, develop a public-facing tool to track progress towards those whole block outcomes update our Vacants website to clarify to the public how they will create affordable housing at scale, provide quarterly reports to the City Council, including the demographic of buyers, and provide an annual review of the effectiveness of the fixed pricing policy, specifically as it relates to the speed of disposition, alignment with those whole block outcomes, and evaluation of the success of the program as it relates to use and occupancy, and those things will start immediately. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, Madam Commissioner, do you have anything to add from what the mayor said, or in response to Ms. Nika or Dr. Farmer?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with both Dr. Farmer and Nika on the topics that they brought up. Affordability especially, that is a key component to the work that we do at DHCD, and it is something, especially looking at how to support the lowest and most vulnerable income residents that we have across the city, specifically 30%, 50%, and below that 60% threshold. This is just one tool in the toolbox when we talk about disposition. We also have additional capital that is needed to be able to help support some of the more deeply affordable projects that we will have coming online. And we are working actively with our communities, doing community planning, block level planning, evaluation of site assembly, and kind of knowing where we need to have affordability put in, and the broader components, as I've mentioned here before. Mr. Mayor just mentioned the anti-displacement strategy. We've often talked about displacement, anti-displacement and development without displacement, and I always bring up that this isn't just about displacement from the front end, so that we don't redo some of the wrongs of the past, such as what happened in Poppleton per se, as an example, where we've displaced a number of residents for just land of a development, but also the need to have the guardrails in place and the permanent levels of affordability in place so that we don't have displacement down the road, say 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It's something that I think about, I bring up with the team a lot. I agree with Dr. Farmer on that as the investment happens, all of a sudden you turn around and you have a middle neighborhood and gentrification, and people are displaced and they don't have the ability to come back. And that is why the anti-displacement strategy, and looking at this not just from the fact that we're not displacing residents at the front end, but throughout the process, is extremely important. All of that work comes into play with the implementation of the framework for community development, the block level planning work with our communities, and will be coming in through various different resources that we have, as the mayor has worked with a team, including the state, to pull together significant capital resources to drive that work and to drive that affordability. And also the needs that are in place. Part of that in terms of fundraising and those monies are also looked at for the pipeline creation of persons ready to purchase a property, whether or not it is purchasing a property that's already rehabbed, or also looking at what it means to take on a technical, needing the technical assistance to take on a rehab project themselves. So I say I share the same core values with both Dr. Farmer and Nika in terms of what we have to look at, and we absolutely will be doing that and working with both of them. I meet regularly with Nika. I'd like to offer that also to Dr. Farmer, to meet regularly so that we can ensure as well that this is all incorporated as we move forward.
Thank you. Go ahead, Madam Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also just wanted to clarify, point of clarification, and also for the commissioner to affirm this so that we know that today what we're voting on is our internal process for how we are pricing and bringing the properties to the board. The actual policy is going to be public-facing, and that is something that would be forthcoming, but that is not what we are voting on today. This is the fixed pricing model, and I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, because I understand there's been some confusion on that. So if you could speak to that,
Yes.
that would be great.
The items before the board today are the standing board agenda item that allows us to bring properties to bring the properties and the disposition agreements in a streamlined manner to the board, and then the actual pricing structure only for the properties that are listed on the Buy Into Be More website.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor, for that clarification. I guess just sticking to that point, Madam Commissioner, the policies that the solicitor outlined that is not part of this, what's the timeline of them being developed?
Well, they're already in existence now. I mean, we haven't made any major significant changes to the existing review criteria that has been in place under, if you go, we made some updates to review criteria about 3 years ago for sales of these properties. We have the standard LDA language, which is the similar same LDA language. We also have the same kind of vetting in terms of trying to ensure that we do not have speculators and slumlords in terms of you can't have vacant properties already that have been sitting, around. We've also done other things internally in terms of just upping our compliance on some of those sales as well. So we are taking in all of the comments and feedback that we receive through this process, and we'll be going through a review and an update on those policies.
So again, I guess just to get back to the solicitor's question of you, I'll vote today. Will the handling of the 200 to 300 properties that housing has spoke about, will that happen under the existing policies and procedures that we have on the books and the way that you're operating? Or will that not take place until the policies and procedures and the anti-displacement and disparity study and all the things that the mayor has outlined and all of the points that Ms. Nika Nandi has come up here and communicated with, until those things are developed is when the fixed pricing properties will come through this board?
No, the fixed pricing properties will come through. We will start, those are all in a varying from first review up to kind of everything's been negotiated and kind of just sitting and waiting to see if we could change in terms of a pricing structure on that. But those would move through. We have the initial 90-day hold that we discussed with you in your office. We will be working, I have this on the team, I've mentioned to the team in terms of contacting and working with Nika in terms of assisting with outreach and how to best kind of gather information and make sure that we are reaching residents who are interested and capable of purchasing properties for rehabilitation. And I think that the larger other kind of policy changes are more applicable also in terms of our larger other disposition methods that we have at play. So we're going to be doing our RFQs, our requests for qualifications in partnership with our communities. We're evaluating in terms of, like we said, the block level planning. We're still doing large acquisition through in-rem or condemnation eminent domain for acquisition of vacant properties that then will be informing kind of those larger issuances of properties and disposition of properties that will have specific parameters on them. We've envisioned knowing that there could be an offering of 100 properties or 500 properties or 700, you could name it, that would have very specific components. Like these 100 properties are very specific, and the only, we want someone that's going to come in for these and create units that are at 30% AMI or 50% AMI. So a lot of the affordability is going to come when we have the larger disposition methods that we use and the other disposition methods that we use. And there are funds and developer incentives that if someone chooses to, when they purchase off of the fixed pricing model, off of Buy Into Be More, a lot of them we're getting 1, 2, 3 different, small developers kind of doing onesies, twosies. And we need to be supporting all different, my opinion, we need to be supporting all different methods in this work.
So back to the question, when you say the properties are in varying degree of review, what does that mean?
From the application was received to
What application?
the Buy Into Be More application.
The Buy Into Be More application. So again, just back to the question, The idea is that, back to the solicitor's point, that we're only voting for the 2 points that the administration keeps talking about the ensure of a more robust, more efficient model of disposition of property. How that is the case, the reality is the current policy and procedures that's on the books from a DHCD perspective will be the mechanism to release the current properties that's under varying degrees of review. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, because the current review process and the current criteria review, there are some minor changes potentially that have been suggested in terms of criteria review, some of which we, could have further discussions about. But there isn't, a lot of the conversation and the conversations that have come up, even, today with Nika and Dr. Farmer around affordability and so forth, that is a larger conversation that isn't tied directly to a disposition criteria review for fixed pricing. And I don't think that those components would come in around fixed pricing as well. This is really going to, in terms of looking down the road and the number of properties that we're going to be seeing coming in, the number that will end up on buying to be more is not going to be the largest number of properties that we have in terms of our disposition methods. And the components in terms of the other administrative changes, if we do make an administrative change around requiring, instead of $90,000 per property to show for rehab dollars, if we increase that, that would be done during an administrative review and update. But at this time, that we are not changing any of those review criteria.
I just wanted to clarify for the record, and again, back to the solicitor's question of you, and kind of piggybacking on Ms. Nika's point. I think her point and her experience was that she could be supportive of this. And I don't want to speak for you, Ms. Namdi, but she would be supportive of this today if those things associated with the prioritization of affordability, the correctness of us going after speculators and slumlords, the allowing folks to age in place, and the Adopt-A-Lot program were built into the APA associated with this fixed pricing policy. Mm-hmm. So I just want to be really clear that the things that she outlined are not part of the fixed pricing policy and will not be executed or developed for the initial rollout of the fixed pricing policy, that the existing policy that we have in the city of Baltimore is what will be used as it relates to this vote today. Is that accurate?
That is an accurate statement. And I would say that a number of the items that Nika specifically called out are already in existence with how the program or policy or review criteria currently run.
How do we prioritize affordability today?
Today, we're prioritizing affordability by the $1 in terms of today.
No. I'm saying the current policy that you guys have. How do you prioritize?
This is the difference between the disposition policy and affordability policies, okay?
So from your expertise, there's no combination between the two?
There are combinations between the two when we offer and can see in the future where there is a large offering of a significant number of properties, like I suggested. Let's say it's, for example, 100 properties that is being offered out with a specific goal of achieving 30% AMI, and coupled with that is the necessary funding availability to help support the developers in achieving a 30% AMI, whether or not that be for permanent affordability, homeownership outcomes, et cetera. We do have programs right now that help support affordability through developer incentives that people can apply to, and those are separate programs related to affordability and driving that, whether or not it's a program through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, whether or not it's through some of our developer incentives. The affordability piece comes in on the money side, and this is the disposition side. Specific to what is being passed today, affordability comes in on the $1 for the community land trust. We're up to about 6, there might be a newish 7 or 8 They've been doing excellent work within the city. We're looking at increasing their capacity. They've been doing some other work to increase their capacity, and they support long-term affordability for both rental and home ownership at the 30%, as well as the 50% and below AMI. So specific to what is being passed today, affordability is in the land trust and with, offering a way for a homeowner to come in at $1. But we have other pieces of affordability that are not part of the actual disposition process, that are separate on the funding and the funding and the sources available for the funding to help support affordability.
Madam Commissioner, for today's discussion, I would like to just focus on the disposition piece and the fixed pricing policy. I realize that the administration and your team is doing a lot of hard work on developing other programs and enhancing other programs. But I think for today's discussion, I think it's important to just focus on what we're voting on today. And I say that because based off of Ms. Nika Namdi's testimony that was in huge support of the administration, I think that unfortunately it's been a little misdirected, misguided. She literally said she would be supportive if these things were to occur. And you're telling me that these things are not going to occur before we roll out this program. So I just want to be very clear with the solicitor's poignant question of saying like, hey, this is all we're voting on. Yeah, this is what we're voting on. However, it's specifically tied to the current policies that's on the books and does not factor in some of the concerns that Ms. Nika Nandi or Director Farmer had brought up. That's really, really important and has been kind of the basis of, I guess, my concern that I've been sharing with you over the past month or so. The concern is about prioritization of affordability. And the reality is we have so much groundwork to make up on because of the failed policies for decades, before the inequity of disposition of property in our city for decades, for all the inherent issues around real estate in the city of Baltimore, that we can't afford, whether it's 200 properties, 300 properties, 500 properties, not to intentionally ensure that the policies are in place so we don't continue to make the failed decisions of the past. We constantly talk about that. When I talk about affordability, I also talk about affordability from the standpoint of affordable home ownership, particularly for Baltimore City residents who've been living in these conditions, that have been paying rent. We heard Dr. Farmer, I think she gave a very poignant testimony on, Baltimore City is one of the best places where you can come in, you can buy a property for whatever, you can paint it, put in a couple new cabinets, some appliances, and charge someone $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500. And then that same property, as fixed up, someone can own it for $800, $900, $1,000 with a mortgage that's amortized out over the course of 30 years. So we all understand and know that to be the case. So again, when we roll out policy, I think it's really important for us to be very intentional about what we're doing, because this does impact kind of where we're going. I guess the next question I have, I just want to make that very clarifying point from the solicitor's question of you. This policy is not citywide. This policy is just for the areas that are in our largest need. Is that accurate? When we look at the housing heat map, the topology map, is that accurate?
It's for the properties located in the housing market typology categories E through J. And that is also where we as the city, in terms of our city-owned inventory, have
the most,
the majority of the property.
Why was the properties in A through D excluded? What's the strategy there?
In part, we don't actually, I don't think we have any properties in a number of those that would be available on buy-in to
There's
be more.
no city-owned properties, residential properties in A through D?
I would need to double check in terms of in terms of what we have that would be available on buy-in to be more. We typically don't have ones that are in A in our inventory. I can't give you that number right now, but
B, C, D?
very few, if zero.
I guess the question is, whether it's 5 or 10 or 15, what's the strategy for, I'm going back to the point of the prioritization of affordable home ownership. Obviously, we have a mixed bag of individuals with different concerns and driving factors and passions that have perfected buying property from the city, right? They have the relationships, they know the tools, they know the systems, then I pick up the phone and get someone, right? When I put a person who's a worker in DPW or DOT or Rex and Parks that's interested in staying in the city, that they've never owned a home, developing a program like this and not prioritizing them, not ensuring that folks that are interested in living in communities that they have dealt with the crime, the grind, and the issues, the disproportionate amount of disinvestment over the past couple of decades. If we're not putting them in the front of the line and prioritizing them, the folks in the mixed bag, they're going to always win out. I mean, that's my opinion. Obviously, it's anecdotal, but that's what I think. And I think that's how property has always been disposed of. My question is around why aren't we prioritizing those individuals throughout the entire program? Why don't we develop the intentionality of affordability, not just from a rental perspective, and we're going to get there in a second, but from a homeowner perspective of our legacy renters that are paraprofessionals, our bus drivers, our folks that are our essential workers that have been keeping the city afloat. How are we prioritizing them in this fixed pricing model?
Well, I think that we have a number of those employees that could purchase properties through the community land trusts that are rehabbed and worked with them. A number of the land trusts have programs that NEHI has a buyer's choice program, which you can purchase any property that can go into the land trust that would support that. I'd also say that other ways that that's supported, again, is the pricing structure is the pricing structure, so it would be $1 for those residents. And then outside of the disposition policy, because there's two different components, there's the disposition and then the other pieces that come into play to provide the funding and resources and wraparound sources for them. Mayor Scott actually increased the city employee down payment and closing cost assistance program from $5,000 to $10,000 to assist. So that would be available. A number of our residents also take advantage of the first-time residents and city employees or the paraprofessionals and so forth. They also take advantage of our first-time home buyer down payment and closing cost assistance, all of which would be coupled with a $1, purchase price through the program, which also helps drive and support affordable homeownership.
No, definitely appreciate that and understand that those programs are definitely stackable and are huge incentives for folks that are interested in owning property in the city of Baltimore. I guess back to the question is, how does this program, when we roll it out and keep it into existence, and I know you built in the 90 days, but how does this prioritize the individuals outside of, say, the community land trusts?
So we're still, and as I mentioned in the last meeting, that we are putting in and working through, and this is one of the things that I do have on the list for my regular scheduled meeting with NECA to ask about. We want to find out which residents across the city of Baltimore want to purchase a vacant property to live in and rehab. Do they want to partner with a development partner? Do they want to take on a FHA 203K rehab loan by themselves with appropriate technical assistance? What properties are they interested in? And we want to get that list of properties and have people to be able to tell us, I'm interested in 1234 X Street because my grandmother lived there and she lost that property, due to a speculation component from the city 50 years ago, and I want to move back to that property. We wouldn't know that unless someone can tell us that, so we're going to be creating a system to capture that information, to have residents be able to submit that information so we can work with them. And we want to see that on any vacant property across the city, not just city-owned vacant property, because then we can figure out what the best acquisition tool is to help assist that resident being able to get that property to then be able to prioritize and then have the other funding sources for them and technical assistance to be able to do the work. Right now, as it has been, even through vacancy to value over the years and the buy into Be More, since it was the new website and everything was launched 3 years ago, we get some residents that do apply to kind of purchase a city-owned vacant for renovation of their own, but it isn't something that's extremely common that happens, and we want to see who is interested, and let's support them doing that and getting that work done.
Herein lies the problem, I believe, of like putting the cart before the horse. I think the reality is, again, the folks in this mixed bag, who are the subject matter experts of getting property in the city of Baltimore, are going to be the first in line to get this property, and we're putting an individual who's interested in purchasing property and staying in the city of Baltimore. As we know, affordability will become tougher and tougher, particularly as when interest rates begin to drop and prices kind of stay the same or start to increase because of competition in the market, not just local market, but national market of folks looking in the city of Baltimore. If we don't have that level of intentionality and we're putting the cart before the horse, I believe, in my personal opinion, that we're putting a disadvantage to that individual that's interested in going after a 203K loan or interested in staying in Baltimore through the construction process and not necessarily going down the pipeline of a CLT. And that's why I keep going back to the point of why not just prioritize? Why not just provide through this program, if we're going to dispose of city-owned property, that there's a waiting period or there's some marketability, there's some intentionality to ensure that the residents of Baltimore that have been renting for $1,200, $1,300, $1,500 a month, that are hundreds and thousands of them are city employees, why not provide them the first right, not a first right of refusal, but just a first right to have access to buy a property for $1. I say that so passionately because that was House Baltimore. And the housing department fought the council aggressively on all the issues around House Baltimore. And we can develop this program, and that's fine. The council will come and be very supportive of it. But it to me, it would make sense, since we talked about that for the past 2 years, for us not to then study it again. Let's just kind of go back to where we were and try to understand how we prioritize working class folks in the city of Baltimore, because we're losing time. And as time will continue, these opportunities will become less and less affordable for our folks, that COLA is not going to do enough in their salary to get them to where the speed of the market is going to go. We've seen this. We're going to watch this in Baltimore if we're not more intentional. We've seen it from D.C. to Brooklyn, to Chicago. We've seen it in every other major city. Baltimore, from a lucky perspective, has kind of been a little slower on the pendulum as it relates to gentrification. But it's programs like this, I believe, that are really dangerous if we're not intentional about ensuring that it does not happen here. So again, I have an issue with the fact that we're not prioritizing affordable home ownership in a way that we should, and benefiting the folks that have been carrying our city, and the middle class folks, working class folks that have been carrying our city in the way that we should. I'm concerned about that, but I'm also concerned about, from affordability perspective, about the rental units. And I've talked about this. I just want to put it on the record. Many programs like this are programs that are kind of the variable of gentrification, because what they do is they come into an area that has been disproportionately disinvested in. They provide opportunities for folks to come in and stabilize that community in the aspect of affordable, because the reality is, you buy one of these units, you fix it up, you're going to rent it out to someone that is under that affordability structure, that's 80%, 70%, 60%, 50% AMI, because that is the conditions of that current neighborhood. So they ultimately stabilize the block. Once they start to stabilize the block, from this government program, the speculators who have been sitting on their properties, now they can come and kind of put their money in. They start to sell off their properties values increases. Now the rent goes up for the folks that have stabilized the block, but they can no longer afford to live there, right? This is nothing that we haven't seen city by city by city. So if we're not intentional, that is exactly what's going to happen here in the city of Baltimore. And we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen in Greenmount West. We've seen it happen in Collington Square. We've seen it happen in all the neighborhoods that we've done all these ribbon cuttings we get excited about. But where are the folks that were living there that have been living through the conditions for the past 20 and 30 and 40 years? We're the working class folks that should have access to home ownership in those particular communities. We're the folks that have been renting, that have stabilized those blocks and ensure that they can at least stay there for 10, 15, 20 years. So again, when we come out with policies like this, I believe, in just my opinion, that we're not just voting on 2 items today, that we're voting on supporting and exacerbating kind of the failed policies that we have today of prioritizing affordability in our city. That is my a strong belief about where we are today. The last thing is, I know that we've talked a lot about, the speculators, folks that have gotten, received properties from the city because of their subject matter expertise of working with the city and getting access to properties. And many of which, were vacant and sold as vacants and are still vacants. Is there any policy or procedure that's in place right now that we're going to bring back those properties back to the city and claw it back based off the LDA that we're still utilizing for this program?
Yes, that exists now.
So I guess if you could kind of, if it exists now, could you tell us like the status of that and how many properties have we done that with and where we are with that?
So it isn't something that is common, but we have utilized the reverter clause. We actually, one of the implementations that have made with the software package that we purchased that kind of now is part of the Buy to Be More, it actually allows us to better monitor that compliance. So this is an area that we've increased our compliance monitoring. We can now immediately get a notification when a property is owner has applied for permits. We can better track those permits, and we're going back and actually notifying anybody that has not been working on their properties and so forth that they need to start pulling, or we're going to be enacting the rights under the LDA or other enforcement mechanisms that we have.
So we're going to start aggressively going after that. That's really good news.
And we've actually already started.
We've started.
Yes, that's been something that was a priority for the last 2 years.
How many properties fit into this bucket, do you know?
I don't know off the top.
Do you know how many folks or property owners that we've reached out to in this process that you kind of just laid out for us?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I can get it to you.
Okay. I say that, and I hate to kind of continue to go down this path, but, the biggest travesty in all this thing that we talk about real estate, and we talk about particularly the racial wealth gap in cities like Baltimore, is real estate, right? And it's real estate because in black communities, it's just historic, based off of the racial redlining that dates back to 1936 and dates back to the city council in 1911. Ultimately, federal government, state government, local governments disproportionately disinvested in certain communities of color, right? And for the folks that own property there, because the infrastructure wasn't being fixed up, because they didn't have these special programs, their properties appreciated at a very slow rate or didn't appreciate at all, right? And they're kind of stuck in those areas and stuck with those conditions. However, it's programs like this, right, that we could responsibly go in and provide home ownership for folks, again, in those communities, not only providing affordable home ownership opportunities for those individuals, but for the individuals that have been living in those communities and owning property in those communities. I guess just a couple quick questions, just want to make sure that we have the right answer is, why didn't we develop an exclusive application period for individuals seeking this as their primary residence?
Actually, we did discuss that, and there's some issues that were brought up from the law department that would potentially prohibit us from doing that. So we continue to have to kind of work through with the law department, but we were not able to do an exclusive application period.
Is there a way to provide prioritization, or is that part of the law
That
department's?
is also part of the conversation with the law department.
I guess, Madam Solicitor, you're not prepared to speak on that today, right? That's fine.
No,
You are?
just to clarify that this is the pricing, and to the Commissioner's point, that the policy portion of it, especially the prioritization, that is a key focus for all of us. And we're working with DHCD to ensure that we do the most efficient thing as possible to make that a reality. So that's something that we're all on the same lines about, and that's the policy. That was the existing policy. We only want to improve it, but that's not what we're voting on today. It's just the price.
Got you. So I keep hearing the word like key. I keep hearing the word core value. Keep hearing, equity. It just gives me back to this idea: why wasn't those policies? We've been working on this for 2 years. Why weren't those policies put in place while we're rolling this out? in doing this more efficient program. I mean, it would be great to do a more efficient program, in my opinion, if it's key, if it's core to us, that we're providing opportunities for affordable home ownership, that those policies and the procedures would be in place before we rolled this program out, and we didn't have a varying degree of reviews of all the folks who are flooding our system trying to get access once we open the floodgates. I guess what's the strategy there of developing the APA after we push this program out?
I don't think that there's a strategy in terms of developing the APA after. I think that, we've had engagement over the last several years around the policy in terms of the pricing component to it. I think that there's been good discourse and conversation and ideas that have been brought forth in terms of how best to prioritize. We've looked at kind of other methods of disposition to reach those prioritizations that you've brought up and others have brought up. And like I said before, this is one component of that. So it isn't about why are we waiting, it's just about a time frame of there's been some components that we're evaluating that have come up through this discussion. But that doesn't preclude us from the other pieces that we do in terms of home ownership and supporting home ownership, affordability, prioritizing affordable home ownership, long-term affordable home ownership, those guardrails in place for anti-displacement through all of the different projects and programs that we have across the agency and the city.
How does this policy work to prevent displacement of the folks that will be used to stabilize these communities?
The fixed pricing is focused on the price of the property that is disposed of. There are other programs that lead towards the anti-displacement components.
So this program does not have
The
any.
community land trust would come in. That is one of the forms in terms of.
So for
through
property
this.
sold outside of the CLTs, this program does not have any mechanisms to prevent displacement.
No.
Okay. How does this policy slow or prevent gentrification from the communities that it's focused on?
So I think, once again, the community land trust pricing, the prioritization of the pricing for a dollar for the homeowner outcome also would do that. And then the other pieces that have to come into play are around having the funding available that's needed to provide the other guardrails associated with this. So when we go to sell a property, we cannot legally also demand that in that initial sale that it has a long-term pricing piece of that. So we've worked through some of these issues as it's come up with some of the other programs. And there has to be that monetary component associated with it for some of the long-term. So I think this creates the transparent piece that gives all of our partners, whether or not they're for-profit, nonprofit, community land trust, or homeowner, the transparency that's needed to understand what they need to build their capital stack to renovate a property, and then the other pieces around funding availability through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, through our CLTs, through other funding sources, help support the anti-displacement pieces.
Okay. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? The only thing I will wrap up and say, if affordability and affordable home ownership and equity and all the nice words that we like to use are really our core competency as it relates to property disposition, this is a really bad policy. It's a bad policy because it doesn't protect or prioritize the rights of the folks in these communities that have been dealing with this as we come out with this more robust, more efficient way to dispose of property. It only provides an added advantage for the folks that have become the subject matter experts, again, of securing property. If we're going to sell a property at a very reduced rate to a nonprofit in the name of affordable rentals, there should be some level of affordable rental period, whether it be some type of a rider or some type of clause that's built into this agreement to ensure that that's affordability is there and that this individual or this entity cannot just sell the property off. So, I've sent a 14-point letter to the administration. I'm not sure I've received a response from housing. on that letter or from the administration. Deeply concerned with this property. I mean, with this policy. The one thing that ropes the council up in this is the council gets 1 out of 5 votes on this on the Board of Estimates. The council does not get to vote on this through the council, so it doesn't take the legislative angle. But more importantly, the council's name is on every single property. When people look at it, they look as if the council is making action and participating in a program like this. And I just want to state very clearly for the record, when it says mayor and city council, it's really just the administration through this policy that has all the control associated with going down this path of 3 out of 5 votes on the board, as well as developing kind of this program in the vacuum, while DHCD fought aggressively against the council as we diligently tried to work through a housing Baltimore program and kind of leverage ARPA funds in doing so. So with that, at this time, I will take a vote.
So moved.
Yes. I'm sorry. Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on page 125, SB 2410251. The mayor's office is requested to approve consulting and professional services agreement with Clark Hill PLC. On behalf of the mayor's office, we have. Please state into the mic, sir.
Will do. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Solicitor, Mr. Comptroller. Welcome back to Baltimore. It's good to see you. My name is J.D. Merrill. I'm Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Scott. Here in reference to SB 2410251, consultant agreement with Clark Hill PLC. Baltimore City engaged with Clark Hill PLC for a number of years to assist in our federal lobbying efforts. The firm assisted us in submitting applications for various congressionally directed spending requests, as well as ensuring our federal delegation members are kept up to date on city matters. These lobbying efforts have assisted us in receiving tens of millions of dollars in recent years for various programs, including funding for our water system, violence reduction strategy, and several infrastructure projects. We understand that this item is well overdue to come before the Board of Estimates and appreciate your consideration today. Concerning the reasons for the delay, there are several logistical issues that compounded to contribute, including the departure of our federal lobbyist from Clark Hill during the period when we were finalizing the contract language. There are also several iterations of the contract language over several months, none majorly substantive, but still contributing to the delay, as well as several personnel changes within the mayor's office during that time. I'd like to note that moving forward, we are working to bring on a fiscal agent in the mayor's office so that these types of delays do not happen again. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chief of Staff. At this time, are there any questions or concerns? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
The only question I have is we recently had a similar contract for a consultant to help us with government relations, and we were told that that contract had to be hurried to the board so that they could register as lobbyists on our behalf.
Yes.
They could not do that until they had a signed contract. And so I'm just wondering, why is this situation different? How were they able to function for us for over a year without having a legal contract in place?
It's a great question. The distinction between that contract, those were our state lobbyists that we approved at I believe the last Board of Estimates meeting, who could not perform their services until they had a contract. As you noted, this contract is for a lobbying firm that we're no longer working with for past due services. So this is for services that they performed in the past during a time when we did not have an active contract with them.
Oh, okay, so but they did perform services during that time, and I get, so are you saying like because they were federal lobbyists, they did not need to register?
I'm not sure about the distinction or the federal lobbying requirements. Quite simply, when we were made aware of the fact that there was not an active contract. Once the personnel changes and turnover, once it became once we became aware of it, we brought this to the Board of Estimates so that it could be resolved.
Okay, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any problem with paying people for work that they did, but if we could find out afterwards, did we or they do anything wrong by them not having a contract in terms of, or are the rules sufficiently different at the federal level that it wasn't an impediment that they didn't have an active contract when they were
I just
doing
got clarification from CEO Leach. There was an active contract in place. The contract expired, and so they were able to register with their active contract. The contract expired, but they continued performing work. When we realized that gap and services provided when the contract had lapsed, we then brought it for the Board of Estimates.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any additional questions or concerns? Thank you, Madam CAO. Hearing none, at this time, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Thank you.
The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on non-routine can be found on pages 140 through 141, SB 24-10791, Baltimore City Information Technology by way of Procurement Department. This request is to approve a cooperative contract with Revenue Solutions Incorporated. On behalf of the administration, we have the director's coming.
Bring it on. We're like Mike Tyson's against Jake's Paul. We're ready.
Good morning, Council President, Mr. Mayor, Comptroller, and members of the board. We are here today to ask for permission to upgrade our existing tax system to a newer version. The existing tax system that we have was basically built in the 80s, and it has old technology. There are a number of benefits associated with not only moving away technically, but also to get benefits to the citizens of Baltimore for whether it's tax sale, real property, and other types of tax vehicles that we use to modernize that in a way that is flexible, that is convenient, timely, and offers multiple back office savings for the Bureau of Revenue and Collections. So I wanted to talk about that. I think we also
Before we move on, sir, who do we have the pleasure of speaking with this morning?
Thank you. My name is Todd Carter. I'm the director for BC. I think I was set up. I think there's a conspiracy here. So you all didn't like my last joke that I gave you. So, again, my name is Todd Carter, director of BC.
Yes, sir.
And I have with me out of Maine the Department of Finance Procurement Director, and Carla Neely, the head of or director for Bureau of Revenue and Collections. I'll ask Carla Neely to talk about some of the benefits associated with this particular project.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, President, Comptroller, and Madam Solicitor. My name is Carla Neely. I'm the Chief of the Bureau of Revenue Collections. This system would be an absolute benefit for our Bureau, and especially in assisting our constituents. One, we have a very outdated system, one in which just the real estate side of the system, this is $1 billion of the city's revenue. So the quicker we can collect it, the better and more efficient the city can run. One part of the process is our liens processing system when when individuals ask for lien certificates. This is a very cumbersome process, pretty much a 100% manual process, and in saying that, the individuals have to go to 5 or 6 different systems to figure out all the liens that are due for the city before you can transfer property. That's number one. Number two, our refund process is the most cumbersome process I've ever seen in my life. You have to order a director of finance check to move money from one bill to another if a constituent makes a mistake, and/or moving money from one year to another. If the system has actually been, if an individual has actually paid in the wrong tax year, we do not have a consolidated bill system. Therefore, you can have an overpayment in 2023, and in 2024 2024, you owe a payment. We don't know that. And sometimes the constituents have to alert us to that. And saying that, they assume that credit is already there on the new year, and it isn't. Ease of creating reports. Right now, every time we need to look at any information, we have to request a report from BSIT, which also takes up additional time on their end when we should be able to create our own reports. And then ease of the public understanding information. So if an individual is looking for credit, we create that credit. They want to know that their bill is at zero, and so we have to do a screen print because people want expediency. And unfortunately, when you look at the screen print, it looks like a computer language versus just information to show that your particular bill is at zero. So those are the things that I wanted to bring to your attention today as it relates to the aged system that we have and how desperately we need this to support the staff as well as our constituents, and keep the phone calls down on your end also. Thank you.
And one other topic, we've had conversations with both Council President, the Comptroller, as well as the administration. We have Adam Main here who can talk, because I know there was concern about this being a co-op agreement. I don't know if this, Council President, will resolve some of your concerns, but it is something that I think Adam can speak to. And this is not rehearsed. I'm throwing him.
No, it's rehearsed. It's all good. You're doing a good job, though. You're doing a good job.
I'll be doing
Cool.
this through-
Ad-lib, go ahead.
Through interpretive dance, if you'd like. Thank you. I wouldn't want to do that.
I don't know if that would be worse than Comptroller's jokes, or I don't know.
No.
Maybe more interesting.
Good
Definitely
morning,
more
Mr.
interesting.
Mayor,
Opinions
Mr.
may
President,
vary there. Okay.
Mr. Comptroller, welcome, Mr. Director, Madam Solicitor. I'm Adam Manny. I'm your Chief Procurement Officer. Just for transparency's sake, what we're talking about right now will also affect SB 2410188 as it comes up later in the morning or early afternoon as we're going. What we are looking to do, I'm following the Comptroller's lead. Blame him. We are looking to ride or piggy bank a solicitation and a contract issued by Baltimore County. Baltimore County did a complete formal solicitation, a request for proposal for this sort of system. They went through, they had proposers comes in, they scored, and ultimately they issued a contract to RSI. In the contractual language, it allows other public entities, such as ourselves, to ride or piggyback that contract. What that does is it saves the city time, energy, effort, and money. By riding it, since Baltimore County did the formal procurement, did the competition, we are just taking advantage of that. If we don't use that, it means that we would then start from scratch, coming up with our own specifications and technical specifications, putting a solicitation together, issuing it. We would probably be delaying this project by at least a year as we go through. I know we spoke about this a little bit yesterday, and as I said, this ties into the other one, SB 2410188, which is a contract that we are currently writing with Sourcewell and JPA, as we'll discuss later on. And so the decision here will ultimately affect what we do with that one also.
So I guess what the board can ascertain from your presentation is we know the problem, right? We all know the problem. The citizens know the problem. Folks, particularly in the council, know the problem because we get the calls. The only other advantage that I'm seeing through this cooperative process is timing, right? Saving 5 to 6 months to a year on going through our procurement process. Is that accurate, or are there other advantages?
The other advantages is also, once the procurement process is complete, then it would be the project kickoff. So really, it's almost a 2-year delay in the project as you're continuing, because we have to go through the procurement process, which could take a year.
Yeah.
Negotiations could take anywhere from a day, the negotiations could take 6 months.
Yeah.
It just depends what's going on. Then when everything is done, we have to come back to the board, of course, for approval, project kickoff, and then have everything start again. So it could be a much longer delay, where we would then continue for anywhere from a year to 2 years or longer to use an outdated system, which could lead to other risks for the city.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I just have a couple quick questions. And first, I'll just start off by saying thank you to BSID and Finance and you, Adam, for your great work on this. We know how outdated the system is. You said that, Director Carter said the 80s, and I just decided to count how many different mayors we've had. I'm the 8th mayor since we've changed the tax system in Baltimore City. We know that this system is outdated and antiquated. I know the three of us electeds have yielded probably hundreds, if not between us all, thousands of calls about this particular issue, and we have to continue to update our systems. But I think also it would be important for the board to note, I think the State Comptroller's Office is also using the same system now, and I know that it's oftentimes that we need systems that have to connect between us and Baltimore County for obvious reasons, but also the state. And I wanted to ask you about how that will help make for a more efficient and improved process as well.
I will turn that back over to Carla.
As it relates to the real estate system, our tax assessments come through the state of Maryland that then have to interface with the city of Baltimore system. Our personal property tax system, those assessments come from the state of Maryland. They have to interact with the city system. And the last piece of the puzzle is when assessments are changed and there may be a credit for an individual, which is most of your phone calls more than likely when it relates to a refund, that has to interact with the city system. And so you're talking about refunds, you're talking about tax assessments, and you're talking about collections.
And for a follow-up.
Yes, sir.
In your expert opinion, has the city's inability or refusal to update its system and not being able to communicate with the state and other systems exacerbated the issues that you heard from the council president?
Absolutely.
And what kind of, I guess my last question for you is, how important do you think this change is for us to be able to operate a 21st century government, but also make sure that we are giving our residents the right information?
One, the residents, I believe, will be in a much better position to at least be able to interact with our system, because right now, they can only see one bill at a time from system to system to system. So this would allow us, a city resident, to be able to see most of their bills. Department of Public Works, the water bill, their real estate bill, just a parking ticket per se, one. So they can look at everything in one place. I think the system will be a lot more user-friendly to an individual. When we do also have to provide information to our citizens, we should be able to easily print a bill. Right now, we can't immediately. The other thing is, I think the staff will be more pleased because it'll be a much more user-friendly system. As you know, during COVID, we lost a lot of senior members that had a lot of institutional knowledge. As you have new individuals come in, they're looking at a very cumbersome green screen type of system. They're used to clicking a mouse and moving things around and not having to know certain language to get into different systems. So I think it'd be wonderful for the staff. And then again, for me and management, as well as our executive team here, less phone calls, less complaints, less confusion in trying to explain to the public. So those are the three things that I think would be extremely beneficial in being able to implement a system like this.
And thank you,
Thank
you to the team, and thank you all for working diligently to get the city's tax system into the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, I think, particularly, I don't want to speak for the mayor or the comptroller. I think we know firsthand the concerns that we are constantly faced with. So we appreciate kind of the historic layout, as well as kind of what a new system will do for the city of Baltimore. I guess for the purpose of us voting on this in this way, I would like to really focus on the process, right? And I think you did a great job, Mr. CPO, of laying out this is a cooperative agreement. That means that we basically ride off of kind of the due diligence of our neighbors that surrounds us in Baltimore County, as well as, I guess, our state government. I guess with that process, like, what do we do? Have we gone over their RFP process? Have we reviewed their technical assessment? Like, how does that look like when we decide to take over someone else's work?
As the process goes, the Bureau of Procurement does look at the process that was used to ensure that everything was done correctly. As for the technical assessment, that we depend upon the subject matter experts to make that decision. We have used the city utilizes this method of procurement on many different things. We've used the County of Baltimore, we've used Fairfax County, Montgomery County contracts, state contracts, sometimes even a federal contract that has it. along with national cooperatives such as Sourcewell, Omnia, HGAC. It is a standard procurement method, but we do our due diligence to review what they did. Do we review all of the work that they did? No. We don't look at all of it. We would have to FOIA them or PIA them and ask them for all their score sheets and everything of that sort. But we do look at the process that they use, and it is in conjunction and aligns with our processes also.
So what do we look at?
In addition, well,
Sorry, go ahead.
one of the things we actually look at in detail are the statement of work that they had that outlines, here are their functional and technical specifications. So just imagine taking a book and editing it versus writing it from scratch. So we're able to take those requirements, go through, look at where they do apply, where they do not apply, edit them to our own, plus add our own requirements in as well. And that comes together as a package for our statement of work as part of the cooperative agreement.
That's interesting. I say that leaning into the direction, so why didn't we take that package and do our own competitive process?
Want to take that? One, the cooperative agreement approach has all of the T's and C's lined out. And so that's the shell with which we work in. To do our own, as CPO just stated, that could take any length of time and would start with a whole set of negotiations on terms, conditions, and all types of components of the actual contract. So from a speed perspective, it does give us that.
So I guess the concern, just at a high level, is this is such a critical system to city operations. It's been basically a pain in the side of residents as well as city government for quite some time. But we know that when we go down a path like this, we are literally writing what the future looks like in the city of Baltimore as it relates to revenue collection. I mean, I know this contract, I believe, is for like 5 years, $12 million, but the reality is, once we stand this up, they're going to be here for the foreseeable future. I say all that to say, it just seems like whether it's 6 months or a year, that we've been living through this for quite some time now. I don't understand, and I would like to get a better understanding why a competitive process outside of saving 6 months or 12 months, why a competitive process isn't the approach that we take, knowing that they didn't utilize the specifications, our business practices, policies, procedures, and processes to do their evaluation, to do their original proposal. Why are we comfortable that doing this approach and not going down a competitive process where we're getting different eyes to kind of look at our system and kind of provide a proposal to us, why that wasn't the better solution?
Council President, I refer to what our CPO just stated earlier about the actual cooperative agreement process. We yesterday talked for over half hour and went through a lot of this, and I don't know that anything we said then changed a concern, or that anything we could say now could potentially change.
It won't. It's just important to say it for the record, right?
I would think, sir, that the risks with the current system outweigh.
So let me be really clear. So the purpose of a briefing is so that we're kind of all on the same page. The purpose of a briefing is so you don't come here and you're hearing my concerns for the first time. But that is still, as it relates to me presiding over this board, it's still really important for us to kind of walk through that path, that we're doing a process that's a critical process to a critical infrastructure and system in our city government that we've literally adopted kind of the practices of Baltimore County, and Baltimore County love Johnny Olszewski and everything, but I hold Baltimore City to a higher regard than anywhere else on the planet. Our core competencies aren't necessarily Baltimore County's or anywhere else's core competencies. So the things that will be factored or built into our proposal or our technical assessment and evaluation of these particular companies aren't necessarily in alignment with other jurisdictions. So when we have an opportunity to do something like this, that's not going to just be here for a year or 2 years or 5 years, but literally going to be here for as long as probably anybody up here sits in city government, I think it's important that we kind of do our own due diligence. So I guess the question is, why couldn't we just take maybe the specifications that they kind of created, since we felt like they were in line of what our core competencies are moving forward, and develop our own competitive process and allow the market to kind of dictate which way we decided to kind of flow? I guess that has been my concern, when we've done similar things like this. The last thing I'll mention, and we don't have to belabor because I think I've laid out enough, is, we went down this path with Workday. and it was a disaster to externally. It was a disaster internally. Through a same particular system where we just did a co-op, where we didn't have vendors come in and evaluate our system. We didn't have a competitive process where we can pick and choose and do our own technical assessment, but we kind of took on a system, and how sometimes that can work and how you're going to always have hangups when you roll out a new system. I guess ensuring that we prevent that for this is critically important. I know you're going to do the best job that you can do. I just get concerned when we go after, we make a major transformative change like this, and we don't have an open process. We don't have a competitive process to allow the market to dictate where it goes. I guess, when did Baltimore County choose this system?
Back in 2021, 22.
So Baltimore County chose this system 2-3 years ago, right? Now, what has happened in the industry in the past 2 or 3 years? What other products have been available to us in the last 2-3 years? Again, I think us waiting 6 months or having that delay 6 months to a year probably maybe come up with the same result. But I think it's that important due diligence to the folks that will be sitting here in 40 years to know that at this moment we went after and we were able to come up with the solution that just made the best sense for Baltimore City at this time, as opposed to adopting just what somebody else has done and not really looking at their work. It's kind of like you giving me an answer in my calculus class, and I write that answer down, but I haven't checked the work in which you came up with an answer. I just push it forward and give it to my teacher to think that maybe that's the right answer. That being said, are there any additional questions or concerns on the board?
I just don't want to be one of the people sitting here in 40 years.
Exactly, but what I think the key is we're making decisions for them right now, and I think those decisions, again, we should do it with due diligence and not just accepting that calculus answer. With that, at this time, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Please note that I am a nay for this particular item. And Madam Clerk, I'm not sure, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I am not sure, but I want to make sure that you have me down as a nay for fixed pricing?
I did, but I was going to confirm that.
Yeah, for SB 2410108, so.
That's confirmed.
Okay, and we have the solicitor has finished with this marathon, and now Deputy Solicitor is stepping in. So we're going to move on to the next item. The next item on this non-routine agenda can be found on pages 174, 175, SB 2410842, the Department of Procurement. This request is to award equipment maintenance contract to multiple vendors. A protest has been received from P2 Cleaning Services. As it relates to the administration, we have presenting for us today Mr. Chief Procurement Officer.
Good morning again, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, Mr. Director. Welcome, Deputy Solicitor. Adam Manning, your Chief Procurement Officer. So with this, there was an invitation for bid issued for these mowing services. The bids were received by the Comptroller's Office and then promptly opened by the Comptroller's Office. When the Comptroller's Office opened the bids, they noticed on P2 Cleaning's bid that there wasn't a total. And so since the total wasn't there, everything was put on hold. The Comptroller's Office then reached out to the Solicitor's Office asking for information. Could we or should we not consider them responsive and responsible? Responsive meaning that this is what they actually, responsible meaning that they dotted their I's and crossed their T's. Responsible meaning that they actually can do the job. This is their primary function. That went back and forth for a bit. P2 Cleaning then was notified of this. They reached out to my office. The Procurement Bureau then looked through the proposals and found that there was a total, just not where we expected it. We reached out to P2 Cleaning, we spoke with them, and had the Comptroller's Office reread the bids in a public setting. The Comptroller's Office reread the bids in a public setting, including P2P's total. P2B's basis of their protest is that it was not a transparent process. The Bureau of Procurement's stand on this is to deny the protest. While there was a clerical mistake made administrative, it had no effect on the end result, which is that the resulting contract would go to the lowest responsive and responsible bidders. P2P was not that. Per line item and per total, they were the highest bidder. So the protest of saying that it wasn't transparent is not true. We had spoken to them, we redid it in a public setting, and even if it was not an administrative error, they would not have won based upon this. And so that is our side. I can go into a little more detail if needed. I don't know if P2P is here to speak, but that is our request, is denied to the protest.
Would you like to go into more detail now, or you want to save for later? or-
I can save for later if
It's
you
up to you.
have any questions.
You have a question for procurement?
Just one quick question. Thank you, Mr. President. When P2 was notified after my office and the law department were going back and forth on how to move forward, who notified them?
We did notify them.
Okay.
And then we notified them again, saying that we found everything, we were bringing this forward. Would this satisfy them? And their response was absolutely yes, that it would.
Okay.
Since we reopened the bids and included them.
All right, thank you.
And that was to correct the administrative error?
Yeah, the administrative initially is not finding the original total, which set the process off.
And so that's why you went back out and it was corrected at that
Once we found
point?
that the total was there, is that the comptroller's office came out in a public setting and reread all the bids, including P2Ps.
Got it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Is someone here or online for P2, cleaning services? Oh. Please state your name.
Hi, good morning. My name is Enma Licona. I'm here from P2 Cleaning. So basically, we were saying that it was an unfair bid because since the beginning, we got rejected for this bid. We were never notified as to why we were rejected, and I was the one back and forth with procurement and the comptroller's office to try to get a response about this, and everything was just being thrown. They kept telling me, go back to procurement because it was denied over there. I went to the law department. They told me, no, it was denied through the other department. So it was just back and forth all the time. They told us we were supposed to get an official letter saying why it was rejected, which we never did. They ended up telling us that it was because of the error that the total was not there, but that was until the very end. So we had no say into this, and we are currently holding the current contract for this. So they had our information. We reached out to the people for the vacant lots where we usually, Ms. Donna is the one that we usually are in communication with, and she had no word of why it was rejected. We kept going back and forth about it. No one was really responsive to us, so that's why we think this was unfair for this bid.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. Is P2 a local company?
No, we are located in Laurel, Maryland.
We consider that pseudo-local.
Yes, it's,
Is P2 minority or woman-owned?
yes.
It is?
Yes.
Minority or woman? Which one?
Woman.
Women-owned,
Mhm.
women-owned company. Does P2 hire or employ Baltimore City residents? Are any of your employees from Baltimore City? Live in Baltimore City?
Not in this particular contract, but we have in the past.
In your company?
In the company, yes.
Yeah, that was the question. Okay, anything else to add?
No.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Procurement Officer, Mr. Lundy, do you have anything to add, Chief Lundy? No? Mr. CPO?
Yes, sir.
I guess, what was the variance of the bid from P2 to what we awarded? If you don't have that
I
off
do,
the
sir.
records. Okay.
If I don't have.
I just think it's important to put it on the record.
Sure. The variances are, the total P2 bid was $7,786,500, $7,786,500. The bid was divided between two companies, both Evergreen and Sparks, who do meet all of our SM-BAD requirements based upon line items. So if I went through line items, the first line item of Category 2 lots, which was awarded to Evergreen, Evergreen's bid was $550,000. P2's bid was $725,000 for that specific line item. For line item 3A.
So we would have to add up these line items.
We have them here.
Is that right? Yeah, what's the total, do you
The
know?
total,
I just want to know the variance, the difference.
Evergreen is being awarded $1.9 million, and Sparks is being awarded $4.8 million.
So we're talking about 5.6 million versus 7 million?
Correct.
Is that about right?
Yeah.
That's my quick back of the
Yes, sir.
napkin, man.
So on the total and per line item, P2 was highest.
Got you. It's 1.9 and 4.7, which totals up to 5.6.
For a total of 6.6.
6.6. 6.6.
It's still like $1 million something less.
Yes.
Correct, about $1 million left, yeah. The only other question is, I guess to the concern that was raised, when a bid is rejected, is it appropriate for the city to reach out
It
and
is.
communicate why?
Yes, and I do not have that information in front of me, if it was or was not. I
So we
can't-
don't know if it was or was not today.
Well, we had to reach out to them because obviously they came back and spoke to us about it. I don't know the method that it was does, if it was through a letter or an email at this time. I would have to find that out.
And do we provide the reason why?
We should.
We should provide the
should,
reason
saying
why.
we found you non-responsive because we didn't find a total, which would then have come back to saying there was a total, causing us to relook at everything to have it reopened.
And I assume, are there opportunities, not to cure it for that, but are there technical assistance moving forward to try to show opportunities on what they did wrong or how they
Yes,
can correct moving
absolutely.
forward?
We always offer a debrief if somebody wants it, be it through an IFB or an RFP. Any of our business partners, we're happy to sit down and let them know and talk specifically about their response.
Can we proactively do that for P2?
Sure, absolutely.
And can we also look at if they were provided information as to why they were rejected?
We'd be happy to.
I appreciate that. Mr. Comptroller?
Yeah, just to clarify, though, we reached out in this case to P2 because there was a problem with their bid, and so procurement was reaching out to tell them that they weren't being found as responsive. So essentially, they were being told, you're not even really going to compete in this, as opposed to, we do not automatically and regularly tell the people with the higher bids, you're not getting this contract because you have a higher bid. They find that out when we have the item come on the Board of Estimates agenda, and it's not them.
Correct. It was also when your office opens the bids and publicly reads out the totals.
Right, but they don't know whether you rule somebody
Correct.
below them out for some
Yes.
reason. Okay.
We do our due diligence. I would also like to point out that traditionally, protest is done when we are making an arbitrary or capricious decision. And this is not that. The due diligence was put in, the work is in, there was nothing arbitrary or capricious about this.
Just slight clarification, protests are successful if
Correct.
you are
Proven,
capricious.
yes.
Right, but protests are made when the other bidders are
can
unhappy.
protest anything, but traditionally
But we're not supposed to find in their favor unless you're capricious.
Correct.
Okay.
For the companies that were ultimately selected, are they local?
I don't have that information in front of me. I do know that they both met the SM bad goals.
Women, minority, could you come and put that on the record, please?
Good morning, Christopher Lundy, Director of the Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development. So yes, for them to be certified, they would be local within our Baltimore City market area. So either in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Howard County, Hartford, Carroll County, or Queen Anne's County.
That's why I said pseudo-local earlier, guys.
Yes, for the market area.
Yeah, got it. Mr. Mayor?
Just for the, thank you, Mr. President, just for the record, one of the awardees' address is 3207 The Alameda, the other is 21218, and the other is 5405 Bell Vista 21206. So they're both Baltimore City proper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So for the record, local, they also meet small women, minority business enterprise goals.
That's correct. They meet the goals that were within our size standards, and they are local to Baltimore City, specifically, as Mr. Mayor has pointed out for us.
Thank you for that.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you, sir. Mr. CPO, any additional things for the board at this time? To the board, are there any questions or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Ms. Comptroller, I'm sorry, we have some unreadiness.
I'm just clarifying, do we have to vote first on the protest and then on the
No.
award itself?
No.
Oh.
We've never done that before.
We haven't?
No.
Oh, okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor, you consistent with
Okay,
that?
sure.
Yeah, we- We've never
pass
voted.
it, like, we could.
Not this term, we've never done that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can just vote on the awards.
Lloyd says no.
So, I'm sorry, in that case, I'll second the deputy solicitor's motion.
So it's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on thank you so much for coming and participating in this process. We ask that you continue to do so. I will say for the record, it takes a lot of courage in a business that you're in to speak up and advocate for yourself through the protest system. Because you're going to be competing in the future for other things. And when you're calling maybe a system into question, or you're calling the way you were treated into question, we need to ensure that we have a fair and balanced, impartial process through this board to allow you to come out and have the courage to do so, because that's only going to make us better in the process moving forward. I would also urge that we also ensure, and I know this administration has been very keen on ensuring that there is no retaliatory, there is no biases, there's no concerns or questions as it relates to it. We look at these things on an isolated basis, and again, it's your testimony, it's your eyes, your ears that provides us the runway room to be improving and become better. I ask that you please leverage the CPO as well as Chief Lundy, so the next bids that come up, you guys will not have any cure issues or not any technical concerns issues, and you will be part of the competitive process moving forward. Okay, so thank you so much. I truly appreciate you coming out today. With that, the next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 178 and 179, SB 2410188, Department of Procurement. This request is to approve the renewal of goods and services contract extension for Tyler Technologies. On behalf of the administration, we have
I think I'm going to have my name engraved up here. Good morning again, Adam Manny, your Chief Procurement Officer. This is a little bit of a Gordian knot that I am going to try and unravel with this. Originally, the board back in March 14th of 2012 approved an initial award for the software system through Tyler Software. That continued on through June 30th of 2021. As we were moving forward, going forward from June 30th, starting in April, Tyler had a new contract, which was through Sourcewell, which this was originally an NJPA, the National Joint Powers Association, which morphed into Sourcewell. As we were going through and doing negotiations and using the system, there were several failures that had to be addressed. It took almost a year to bring everything back on track, so where we could print personal property printing, get that resolved, and a variety of other issues, XML processes, which are well beyond my technical abilities. So what we are looking and asking the board to do is two things. First is to retroactively approve the contract from April 1st, 2021 through December 19th, 2023, which was the original terms. And then also approve an extension of that from December 20th through March 30th of 2024. The total value is $1.8 million, rounding up. The reason we are asking just for the extension through March 30th is this will allow us to pay our past due, but Tyler also bills quarterly in advance, so this payment will also take us through June 30th. We are planning to come back to the board in May with the new Sourcewell contract with Tyler for these services, so we have a clean break and everything moves forward completely. This is also, the new contract with Tyler through Sourcewell will take us through 2026, which is part of the RSI, which you approved over, when that system will start then being moved forward. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. CPO. Are there any questions or concerns? Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, I'm getting a disagreement here on the ending date for the extension that we're doing today. When is this? When will this be through?
March 30th, 2024.
Okay, so just 10 days from now.
Yes, sir.
So what happens to the system when this contract expires in 10 days, but we're not expecting the new one?
The services will be going through June because Tyler bills a quarter in advance. So we will be paying the back, and we will be paying the current, which will take us through June.
Okay.
And then we are going to come before the board in May for a new contract, which will then take over in the next quarter as we move forward.
Was there a particular reason why we weren't just extending it through the end of May?
English one more time. This was what was requested from my office, so this is what we went with, since we're going to have the new contract in place, and since it's paid through quarterly through the end of June.
They didn't care.
No, and it makes
Okay.
more sense to start the new contract again at the beginning on July 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year, as we will move forward with it.
Okay, is there, and I just feel obliged to ask, is there a particular reason that this wasn't submitted earlier, given the retroactive nature of?
My understanding is because of the technical issues, as we were working through those. There's a list of them that started back on basically in June of '21, as they started working through those technical issues and getting them done. And some of them were not resolved till 4/4 of '23. So it took a little while to get through, and then negotiating and getting things correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Any additional questions or concerns for the CPO? Hearing and seeing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Nay, please make sure you have me down as a nay, Madam Clerk. So it's a 4-1 vote. Again, moving on, that item is approved. The next item on our routine can be found on pages 199 and 200. SB 2410-765, the Department of Procurement. This request is to approve the increase to the goods and services contract of Scranton Manufacturing Company, Incorporated, New Way Trucks. On behalf of the administration, we have.
We will call you, but not yet. Good morning again. Yeah, my name is Berke Atilla, Director of the Department of General Services. So I'll go, yeah. But I want to talk to you about the reason why we're doing, and the technical details and the dollars. I have Adam Mannon and my chief fleet, Abrara Bakhtir, is here. As you all know, fleet and its ability to replace and repair and then put new trucks on the ground is completely important for our availability needs to deliver our services. What this contract extension and the dollar value will give us two things. One, as we are ramping our replacement plan, it allows us to be able to proactively engage multi-year contracting, to be able to place orders in advance or as fast as possible without having to go through dollar extensions. Why is that important? Because our budget cycle and then the contracts allow us to be able to place these orders at the beginning of the fiscal year after the borrowing is approved. I don't want to get into the master lease agreement, but you all know that we come before you each year to get an approval at certain dollar amounts, about $35 million to place these orders. Having contracts have this ceiling limit extended will allow us to place orders again in advance. That would cut down the delivery time that it takes, because rather than us going to them, let's speak in terms of just-in-time order, that will then start building these assets versus we put them proactively. But in order to be able to put them proactively, you need to have the offset limit extended. So this is specifically trying to achieve that. I have all of the trucks that we have in queue to be placed as the fiscal year rolls forward. My chief can speak to that, and if I'm misrepresenting or missing anything on the contract's value, I have Adam here again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Director, and thank you for your great work, and finally for us to actually see some of these trucks and vehicles that we've been waiting for quite some time. Can you, just for the general public, can you talk about the age of our fleet and the need for us to update that fleet, but also talk to us about how we're and if we're starting to see improvements on the supply chain that had been a big problem for us for the last few years?
Absolutely. I'll start with the supply chain problems because that was an added bonus. Our fleet is old. We have about 5,000 pieces of equipment from golf cart to a Zamboni, anything in between. We're very specific in that regard. We have made significant improvements in terms of capital replacement to backlog. But over the maybe last 10 years, we really did not adjust that dollar value accordingly to account for the increases in inflation. But under this administration, last fiscal year, we have about a 40% increase to our $25 million to $35 million to address that backlog. Without an average age for the city in that composition, it's not meaningful.
I can provide it if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, but for specifically this group of assets, our average age. Oh, right, come on.
Yes,
Mr.
Good morning. So the average age of our load packers is roughly 8 years. Industry standard is 5.5. So this contract will allow us to get closer to the industry standard.
Yeah, we're trying to get closer to 6 with the
Who do we have the pleasure of speaking with?
Yeah, Abrar, just practice.
Abrar Bukhtair, I'm responsible for the fleet management division.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And I'll just say again, thank you to the entire team at DJS and procurement for helping us to get to this. Having written in one of them recently, they wouldn't let me drive it, so we'll have to change that later. But
You don't have a license?
I have a yellow card. That day they just didn't want me to drive.
If you like to procure your CDL license, we have a wonderful program.
It was in a parking lot.
It wasn't in a parking lot. It wasn't. I was being nice that day because normally I would just drive it.
Take it.
But thank you.
We appreciate it.
But it's also important for the workers and the upgrades. And finally, Mr. Comptroller, Mr. President, having GPS in it, which I reminded the city administrator and team where they didn't know where the truck was. And I said, well, it has GPS. Y'all don't know where we are at. You just got to remember to use the technology. But thank you very
You can
much.
find your way in, and we can find you at the same time. Thank
Any
you.
additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, at this time, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. I see former Councilman Kiefer Mitchell in the back of the room. Thank you for joining us today, Councilman Mitchell.
It's good to see democracy in action in my city.
Yes, sir.
Is that democracy in action or democracy?
The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 203 and 204, SB 2410870, Department of Procurement on behalf of the Conventions Complex. The request is to approve a goods and services award to Levy Baltimore LLC to provide food and beverage services to the Convention Center Complex. A statement of opposition has been received from Sodexo Live as well. On behalf of the administration, we have
Come on up. Good morning again, Adam Manning, your Chief Procurement Officer, and with me I have
the czar of conventions in Baltimore.
Matt Campbell, Executive Director, Baltimore Convention Center. Good morning, everyone.
Back is fully behind you.
Thank you. I know.
All the way behind you.
Exactly, it's my ring man. Thank you very much. This was a request for proposal to have a new catering contract for the convention center. The current contract has been in place for multiple years and through the entire COVID pandemic as it went through. As we went through, we had several responses, and the team reviewed all of them, the technical, the financials. We had a third-party consultant help us with some of the financials to make sure we were reading net present value correctly and going forward. I even asked the Chief Financial Officer at one point for his opinion on something, which he was happy to give me. The letter from Sodexo, I would say more as less of a protest, but more of that they were there, they recognized the committee's hard work and doing, and that if we would like to have a discussion with them, they would be happy to. I do not see it as a letter of protest to the award of this, and if you would like more information and details, I would let Mac explain as we go forward.
Thank you. Mr. Edie, anything to add?
This is a process that we spoke about a couple months ago when we had to extend the current contract. We are very happy to be at this point where we can make a recommendation. While it's bittersweet to change from companies, it's a matter of business. It's a matter of policy and practice. We went through a rigorous nationwide selection or RFP process and felt that the procurement bureau, as well as our third-party consultant, was diligent in all of its calculations and considerations. We even included a selection committee, so this was not done in a vacuum. And while it's bittersweet, we were excited about the opportunity for Levy to come and provide excellent hospitality and customer service for the next decade.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions for the Chief Procurement Officer or for the Convention Center?
How old is that ID card?
If not, okay, now we're going to go to the protest. So we have Sodexo, and we also have Mr. Wayne Resnick, who's here. First, we're going to have Sodexo. If you're online. Are you representing Sodexo? No, you're Wayne. Are you, yeah.
Yes, sir.
If you could come up first, sir.
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, members, Douglas Connor. I'm the Senior Vice President for Sodexo Live, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Senior Vice President for Convention Centers in North America. So, Mr. Mann is quite correct. Our letter is not a letter of protest, okay? What I would like to say to you is that we've served with you for 14 years. We've been on the Visit Baltimore board for almost entirely that time. As you know, our general manager, Michael Barrett, has been the mayor's award for the business leader of Baltimore several different times. The premier sponsor for Journey Home, and certainly we support food banks in the community and we support charities in the community as well. You also know that 60% of our team lives in Baltimore. Our letter is not intended as a protest. We respectfully ask the city take their time with this very important decision that economically impacts Baltimore and the state of Maryland. And thank you for having me here this morning, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much for participating in the process.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Resnick?
Good morning, Wayne Resnick from Martin's Caters, also partner with Aramark at the Convention Center, BID, and we've been there before. I just was looking at the whole process, and I just wanted to go through it, and then I have a couple issues. The original contract was due on June 7th, which were submitted, and that day they changed it to submittal to June 21st, and then moved it to July 19th. On the 29th, we did our oral presentation of September and a tasting, and they asked for best and final on October 26th of last year. Now, this process has been going on for 9 months with no answers, when it's going to go on, nothing from the city, nothing from the, and we were calling the consultant, no answer where this was in the process. Now that it's been awarded, we were notified last Thursday. We have 3 days to try to figure out what's going on. And as I look at it, and I ask questions because Levy's bid originally went to legal, and I wanted to know why it wound up at legal to begin with. This was done on a scoring process. We have never seen the scoring process. And also, after best and final, we have no idea if anybody changed their bid on the best and final. Also, looking at this morning which was published for the MBE and WBE, Classic was on their bid for 6%, and this morning it's on there for 8% of the bid. Their Quality, who is their temporary company, is now went from 18% on the bid to 22% on the bid. I can tell you from my experience, there's no way you can use 22% of temporary staffing and follow all the other conditions of this contract that you require to use people that are local, that work for them. And if you're using 22% of your money on a temp agency, that's not going to the employees, all of that. It's going to the people that are temp agencies. So I don't understand how MBEs and WBEs get changed from the final bid. And again, I don't know how some of these things, knowing what I know about the industry that I've been in for 50 years of my life, that even these things at 8% for Classic, just wrap sandwiches, wrap snacks, and those things, if you figure on a $10 million contract at 8%, that's a lot of money to spend and yet that's their labor to produce that as well, so that's even less through the convention center. So my question is, why haven't we been able to see what we've asked for, which to do analysis, we'll have to see the scoring system. And quite honestly, all the companies looking at 70% of the score, quite honestly, they all meet the criteria. They all have been in the business long enough, so they're all going to score, or at least they should score pretty close to one another. It does come down to a financial. Again, we don't know what the final financials are. We didn't get to make an evaluation because we don't know what the finals are. And again, I don't understand how you change minorities from, take their participation level up from what they signed and agreed to and was submitted in the bid. And again, I don't know how this is a 9-month procedure. They got everything long ago, and if there were no changes to the financials, it's even longer ago than they had the financials to look at. And so that's really where my question is I just think this process has been, there seems some things that are a little bit strange to me in the process here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Resnick. Mr. CPO or Chief Lundy, would you guys like to address any of the concerns that was brought up from Mr. Resnick?
Yes, good morning again. First is I have no knowledge of the joint venture asking for the information. We're happy to provide it. It is all public documentation when it's done.
And what information, just to put on the record?
If he wanted to see the proposals from the other submitters, we have that information. We will make that information available. But there has to be a request. There has been no request that I know of. Of his other concern about the Levy's ability to do the work, quite frankly, while we respect his opinion being an expert in doing it, he doesn't know the inside of Levy's, and he can't tell Levy how to do their business, whether they're going to be doing 20% or more, or how they're going to be doing it. As for the time frame, this is a very complicated issue with a lot of financials, and we did our time and we did our due diligence. It's important for the city to get this correct, as you've pointed out many times, Council President, that we do have to do things. In my career, I have had items take a day. I have items take 18 months as we've gone through. The process is how we go through it to make sure that we're doing things correctly, we're doing our due diligence, and that we don't make mistakes that we end up having to go to the solicitor to help bail us out. If they want to file a formal protest, of course they can, which will come back up. But again, I feel that the Bureau of Procurement, the Convention Center, we have done our due diligence. This award should stand as is as we're moving forward. I am happy to give them or anybody a debrief, like I said. I'm happy to sit down and get them the documents that they're requesting that we can put out. For this SM bad information, I'll let Director Lundy if he has any comments.
Again, Director Lundy of the Mayor's Office of Small and Minority Business Advocacy and Development. As far as any changes with the participation, there was a cure done on these bids. So people did have an opportunity to resubmit documentation. So I think that would be the only thing that would be the result of any changes that would have happened with
So
participation.
that changed the 18 to 22 and the 6 to 8 from a minority participation perspective.
That's my understanding, sir, yes, that they had an opportunity to resubmit the documents. And of course, I'm not upset with anyone saying that they're going to give more participation to our local minority and women-owned businesses.
Understood. Mr. Mayor?
When he finishes, I'm good.
Oh, anything else, Mr.?
No, that's all. I believe that's the only issue that would have resulted in any sort of inconsistency in documents from the original bid to where we are at this time.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
No, thank you. Thank you, Director Lundy. I just wanted to tag the CPO with talking with Mr. Resnick immediately today. We know how much they do in working with the city of Baltimore for a long time, so we want to make sure that they get the information that they need very quickly.
Just so you know,
Mr. Resnick, you can speak.
we did ask for the information last week from Mr. Bay, who is the procurement officer on this. We've got no return call. I was also in the office here. They wouldn't let me in on Friday, so I had to come in Monday. They were calling from here. They were very nice in trying to get Mr. Bay on the phone to try to get these documents, and still nothing today. If you award this today, it doesn't matter what I see in that, and can evaluate in those bids. It's going to be too late. Second of all, to say that, I've done this for a long time, and I've never known, when I've protested openings before where people have put minorities in for the wrong use or use the wrong percentages on them, and it's not usually open to go, it's your job before you submit your bid to make sure everything's proper. So I don't know why they'd have to go back and get a second bite of the apple. I've again won bids. I've seen people put up school buses for delivery of food, which they're not entitled to do. But they've never been allowed, and they can't sit here and say, I'm going to go change my vendors now. So I just don't know when that started, that once you submit, you can change anything you want in your bid, except last and final offer, I would guess, in this case.
Ms. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to check something, I think, with Director Lundy. My understanding is that when the opportunity to cure bids is offered, that is because all of the respondents have been found to not be compliant, and therefore everyone is offered the chance to correct essentially your bid so that you are in compliance, which I believe would imply that if Aramark was a bidder, their bid also was not compliant.
So that's correct. That's my understanding, that at the time of the original bids, that all of the bidders were non-compliant with the MWBE requirements, not necessarily with all the terms required for specifications for the bid, but they did not all achieve, none of them achieved initially all of the participation. And that may be for a host of reasons, whether it's defects in the signed form, somebody not being certified at the time, or not even achieving the goals. But folks were non-compliant originally, with all of them being non-compliant. Pursuant to the procurement regulations, the procuring agency is able to enable all of the bidders to have an additional 10 days to come into compliance and resubmit their participation documents. It's my understanding that's what happened in this case. We did then receive and review the cure documents and got to the ultimate compliance as we sit here today.
Okay, so the first reason I say that is, Mr. Resnick, you might want to have also, not right now,
No.
but you might want to also make sure that you talk to Director Lundy afterwards and get further details on that issue. But that wasn't really even the main issue I wanted to raise. Okay. I just, you mentioned that at the end. The issue I wanted to raise is that procurement has a policy, and this policy is something that the law department, I believe, has held up in the past, is that the information that procurement uses to come up with its recommendation to the board are considered deliberative documents, and so they will not share that information until after the board makes a decision. So, so Mr. Resnick asking last week or yesterday procurement to provide the scoring for the different bids, procurement would have said no if Mr. Bay had returned his call. They would have said no because that is their policy. Now, I think there might be room for conversation around what information we should and should not be willing to give out prior to the board making an award, but that's a conversation that's going to have to happen involving both law and procurement, and it would not be something that we can just, waive here at the board level.
The only thing I'd like to say is, I think they came back to us at Aramark and said our minorities were not, but they were, didn't have to change anything. They were in order. So to say everybody's was out, Aramark's was not out of, and didn't have to change anything. So that's my understanding of what happened.
That's technically that is not the issue before us anyway, but I really recommend that you and Director Lundy have a conversation, and depending on how that conversation goes, if you want to follow up with us, I think all of us would be happy to have that conversation with you.
But if you award today, it's meaningless anyway to do that because it's not going to change anything.
It's going to change the understanding of why you walked away feeling that you did not have any problems with your bid when Sinbad and procurement clearly thought you did. And that's the part that we can address after the fact.
And again, the only thing I say is that some of the things you can put any number you want in there, and I've seen it before where they haven't even used minorities when they've said they were going to use them. And there's no way, I'm going to tell you, labor-wise, and he can tell me I don't know anything about Levy. He's right. But I know the business, and if you're going to run that kind of labor, you're not going to make a dime, plus what your normally labor would be. And so you can put any number in there you want, and it works when you put it in there, but it doesn't work in the end.
From your experience, what's a healthy balance of the temp employee in the industry? You said 22 is just way over.
Well, 22% would probably be pretty much the entire hourly payroll of the facility.
Because you have to pay the vendor that's supplying this temp
You have to
workers.
pay, not only that, where you're going to get your own people. And under this bid, you're supposed to be using people from the city and hiring your own and doing certain things. There's all sorts of things in this bid of using city labor, using the kids from here. And I happen to be I think the largest in the summertime of using the children from the program. But I know and I know what Aramark's numbers are. I know what my numbers are. But you can't run a 22% temp with it and then make a living on this thing. You know, it just doesn't. And again, just thrown out there.
Thank you, Mr. Resnick.
Thank you.
Is there any additional questions or concerns from the board? At this time, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. That's going to conclude, Madam Clerk, right? This will conclude all the business before the desk of the board. We will adjourn at this time. Our regular scheduled meeting for the Board of Estimates will occur next on Wednesday, April the 3rd at 9 a.m. Baltimore, I absolutely love you, and please enjoy March Madness.
Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies, we're getting started a little late. Board of Estimates ran long, and we have a lot of bids to open, so we are just getting ourselves fully organized to read out 11 bid openings today. But first up, we have some addenda to share. First, from the Bureau of Procurement for RFQ 502, Dental Health Maintenance Organization and Dental Preferred Provider Organization Model Plans. The due date was originally today, 3/20/2024, and the new opening date will be April 3rd, 2024. For the Department of General Services, GS 23819, City Hall Roof and Dome Restoration. That due date was originally today, but the new opening date for that bid is 4/3/2024. For Department of Public Works, SC 993, Rehabilitation of Jones Falls Pumping Station, originally due today. That new opening date is April 3rd, 2024. For the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 536, Decals and Striping for City Vehicles and Equipment, originally due today. The new opening date will be April 3rd, 2024. For the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 505, Group Life and AD&D and Voluntary Benefits, Part A, originally due today, is going to be opened on April 17th, 2024. For the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 504, Vision Plan Administrative Services, originally due today, will now be opened on April 17th, 2024. And finally, also for the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 503, Cobra Administrative Services, Part A, originally due to be opened today, will be opened on April 17th, 2024. Those addendas should have been sent out to all vendors in a timely manner. And those items will also be posted on our website by close of business today, along with the results of the bids that we are opening. So first up today, we have a bid for the Bureau of Procurement. This is RFQ 501. Isn't one down there? Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry, I'm micromanaging the piles of bids. Apologies, team. Again, that was RFQ 501. This is for gun range cleaning and lead removal services. That is not funny. I don't know why I think that is. I never thought about that before. This bid, that was 501, right? Yeah. Okay, so that is bid 501, gun range cleaning and lead removal services. Up first.
Up first, we have EnviroTrack Ltd. And that total is 1,039,421.00.
Okay, that number was 1,039, comma, oop, was it 461?
421.
Now my 2 is sticking. Hang on one second. Let me fix this, and I'm going to read the number back to you again.
Okay.
Was my bad. 1,039, 421.00.
That is correct.
Very good. Are you going to hand me the, okay, and I'll stack them.
I can start.
Okay, thank you. So that bidder was EnviroTrack Ltd. for $1,039,421.00.
Up next, we have Atmos Solutions, Inc. And that total is 514,400.00.
That number was 514,400.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was Atmos Solutions Incorporated for $514,400.00. And I believe we have one more bidder?
Yes, we have one more bidder. All right, and our final bidder is Sam Dow Construction, Inc. And that total is 367,770.00.
Okay, that number was, shoot, it's sticking again. 367?
Yes.
Let me try that again. That number was 367,770.00.
That is correct.
So that bidder was Sam Dow Construction, Inc. for $367,770.00. And that was our final of 3 bidders for RFQ 501, gun range cleaning and lead removal services. Up next, we have a bid for the Bureau of Procurement contract RFQ 516, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, OEM parts and services. And it looks like we have no bids submitted.
That is correct.
So we have no bids submitted for RFQ 516, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram OEM parts and services. Again, no bids submitted. Up next, for Department of General Services, contract number GS16810RRR, contract for Mitchell Courthouse roof replacement. Up first, we have
Up first, we have Rough Roofing and Sheet Metal. And that total is 5,671,608.00.
Okay, that number was 5,671,608.00.
That is correct.
And I was going to ask that question because that looks like a bid bond situation. Very good. That was Rough Roofing and Sheet Metal for $5,671,608.00. And up next,
Up next, we have W.M. Schlosser Company, Inc. And that total is 4,388,000.00.
So I have that number as 4,388,000.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that was W.M. Schlosser Company, Inc. for $4,388,000.00. And that was our final of two bidders.
And, yeah,
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Bid bond received. And that was our final of two bidders for contract GS 16810RRR, and that is for the Mitchell Courthouse roof replacement. Up next, for Department of Public Works, we have contract SC 1004. This is for Herring Run Sewer Shed Inflow and Infiltration Reduction, Area A.
all right. Up first, we have Spinello.
Okay.
And that total is 25,483,300.00.
Okay, that was 25, comma 5, sorry, let me start again. 25, comma 483, comma 300.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was Spinello, and that bid was $25,483,300.00.
This item also has a bid bond.
I hope so. Okay. And up next,
Thank you. Our final bidder is American Contracting and Environmental Services. And that total is 1,872,006.00.
did you say 1, comma?
Yes.
872?
Yep.
Comma 006.00?
Yes.
Okay, and there's a bid bond?
No.
And there's no bid bond. Okay, I will make that note so that the agency can review. That was American Contracting and Environmental Services, and the bid was $1,872,006.00. Okay. And that was our final of two bids for contract SC 1004, Herring Run Sewer Shed Inflow and Infiltration Reduction, Area A. Up next for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 499, Baltimore City Shuttle Transit Services. This is listed as a Part A, meaning that we're opening qualifications but not pricing.
All right, so up first, we have First Transit.
Very good. That submitter was First Transit.
All right, and then our final bidder is Academy Express LLC.
And our second submitter is Academy Express LLC. Do you have an address for them? Because I can fill that in whilst we are talking.
Yes.
Yes, right
Yeah,
here.
it's 111 Patterson Avenue, Hoboken, New Jersey, 07030.
07?
030.
Okay, got it. So those two submitters were First Transit and Academy Express LLC. We've opened the Part A's, meaning the qualifications to work on this contract, which is RFQ 499, Baltimore City Shuttle and Transit Services. Again, we have opened the Part A for this bid, not the pricing. So up next, we have Department of Transportation, TR 24004, reconstruction of alleys citywide.
Up first, we have Santos Construction Company, Inc. This one right here. Okay. So the total for this is 25,000.00.
So let me repeat that back, 25,000. That sounds tiny for
That's very
alleys
small.
citywide. Can you give that
This is
same
this one.
page number?
This one?
Bear with us,
That's correct,
folks.
Okay.
So we're gonna reread, and the total is,
1 comma,
thank you.
063 comma, 627.50.
0. Okay, so the total bid for that bidder, which was Santos Construction Company, Inc., was 1 million, or rather, let me read the number back to you to make sure I have it right. 1,063,627.50.
That is correct.
That bidder was Santos Construction Company, Inc. for $1,063,627.50. Did this require a bid bond? Okay, thank you. And then I would check the same page number. If they got submitted consistently, we should get the total.
Up next, we have J Villa Construction, Inc. This does have a bid bond.
Thanks.
Okay. And that total is 1 comma, 033 comma, 119.50.
So that number was 1,033,119.50.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was J Villa Construction, Inc. for $1,033,119.50.
All right. Our final bidder is Priority Construction Corporation. No, I think it's just.
We're demonstrating every time why these bids should be digital. Good job, team.
All right, that total is 1 comma, 563 comma, 540.00.
Okay, that number was 1,563,540.00.
That is correct.
And do we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
Great. So that bidder was Priority Construction Corporation for $1,563,540.00. And that was our final bidder. That was our final of 3 bidders for TR 24004, reconstruction of alleys citywide. Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000512, Young Tree Care Services. Not baby trees, adolescent trees. That's a thing.
Thank you, Laura.
The board meeting ran so long, I'm feeling giddy.
All right. Up first, we have Division Street Outdoor Contracting. All right. And that total is 734,550.00.
Okay, that number was 734,550.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was Division Street Outdoor Contracting, and the bid was $734,550.00. And I don't believe this is a bid bond situation.
No,
right?
it does not.
Because that's for capital.
Up next, we have Forest Valley Tree and Turf LLC. And that total is 3,805,926.00.
Okay, that number was 3,805,926.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was Forest Valley Tree and Turf LLC for $3,805,926.00.
All right, our final bidder is the Davy Tree Expert Company. And that total is 4,328,940.00.
Okay, that number was 4,328,940.00.
That's correct.
The Davy Tree Expert Company for $4,328,940.00. And I believe that was our final of three bidders for RFQ 512, Young Tree Care Services. Up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 455. This is for pump maintenance, repair, and installation services.
We have one bidder, and that is DSI Inc. And that total is 1,691,250.00.
That number was 1,691,250.00.
That is correct.
And that bidder was DSI Inc. for $1,691,250.00. And that is not a bid bond thing. Okay, so that was our one and only bidder for RFQ 455, Pump Maintenance, Repair, and Installation Services. Up next for Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 527, Supply and Delivery of Trash Receptacles. This is my favorite.
Okay.
We need a receptacle.
All right, so this one.
You guys can just take your time. Yeah. I also have a couple that don't have addresses that I'm happy to fill in once we get to them.
All right, up first, we have Treetop Products.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that total is 512,712.00.
That number was 512,712.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was Treetop Products for $512,000. Oops, sorry, let me start again. 512,000, 500, 512, $512,712.00. Thank you for the emotional support, Casey. Up next,
That's okay, thank you. Up next, we have Penn Jersey Paper Company. And that total is, sorry, just want to double check here. Is this one right? Yeah. That total is 707,233.80.
that number was 707,233.80.
That is correct.
That bidder was Penn Jersey Paper Company for $707,233.80.
All right, up next, we have JGW Machine Limited. And that total is 404,130.00.
That number was 404,130.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was JGW Machine Limited for $404,130.00.
All right, and up next, we have I2I Solutions, Inc.
Hold on one second, because I'm going to put their complete company name in here.
Sure.
Solutions, Inc. Okay.
All right. And their total is 237,525.50.
That number was 237,525.00.
0.50.
Whoops. 237,525.50. Okay. That bidder was I2I Solutions, Inc. for $237,525.50.
That is correct.
Shay, do you have an address showing up on their, on the inside envelope?
Yes, I do. It's 9896 Honeybee Drive, Mechanicsville, Virginia, 23116.
23116. Got it. Okay.
All right, and our final bidder is Bizanti Industrial USA LLC. And that total is 227,165.00.
That number was 227,165.00.
That is correct.
That was Basante Industrial USA LLC for $227,165.00. I also don't have an address for them, if one is on the bid, internal bid stuff.
Should be
Let
on the
me,
front.
Oh,
Yeah.
2452 Druid Hill Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21217.
21277.
It's 21217.
Sorry. It's West Side. I don't know the zip codes sometimes. I'm an East Side girl. Okay. So that was the final of 5 bidders for RFQ 527, supply and delivery of trash receptacles. Up next, we have for the Bureau of Procurement RFQ 529, crime scene supplies, assorted. I know, I'm having trouble not cracking up today for no reason.
It sounds like a grab bag. You find it under your seat, so you're like, oh, what's here?
All right, up first is Searchy Acquisition Company, LLC. And that total is 1,836. I'm sorry, let's strike that. I'm gonna do that one more time.
Let's try again. Go ahead.
They don't have commas.
There are no commas. You want to just.
I just want to make sure.
You know what?
You can just read all the numbers up to the decimal point, and
Okay.
then I'll read it back to you with commas.
Okay, so it's 183,681.90.
Okay, so that's 183,681.90.
Yes.
That was Searchy Searchy, does that sound right?
Yes, that's
Searchy
correct.
Acquisition Company LLC for $183,681.90.
Thank you. Our final bidder is Prospects Enterprises, Inc. And that total is 506,598.00.
Okay, that bid was 506,598.00.
That is correct.
Okay, that bidder was Prospects Enterprises, Inc. for $506,598.00. And that was the second of 2 bidders for RFQ 529, Crime Scene Supplies, assorted. One more. And our final bid opening for today, yes, that's true, RFQ 483, installation of fiberglass thermal insulation of metal building.
Right. Up first, we have Alden, Inc. And that total is 273,400.00.
The number was 273,400.00.
That is correct.
That bidder was Alden, Inc. for $273,400.00.
All right, and our final bidder is USA Energy Co., Inc. And that total is 109,827.00.
That number was 109,827.00.
That is correct.
So that bidder was USA Energy Company, Inc. for $109,827.00. And that was our final of 2 bidders for RFQ 483, installation of fiberglass thermal insulation of metal building. And I believe that was our last bid for today. Our next bid opening will be on April 3rd.
Will be too soon, indeed.
2024, hopefully right at 12 noon. And thank you all for tuning in today. Thanks, team, and thanks, TV 25.